She signed the final sketch at 2 a.m., then hid the cough behind her hand. Kiana Noel built Noel Maison from nothing. A black woman at the head of the most coveted luxury house in the city. Ivory tailoring, a chain thin as thread down her collar, a fever she refused to name. Her husband is Seo Junho. They call him the Quiet One, head of the Korean Mafia in Seoul. A dragon inked down the left side of his neck, a steel watch, a charcoal suit that never creases. At the family dinner, his father corrects her Korean in front of everyone. His sister smiles. New money doesn't buy tradition. Kiana swallows it. For peace, for the marriage, for the children she still dreams of. Then the fever wins. She collapses at the atelier. A hospital bed. A pink satin robe where the ivory suit used to be. Junho comes to her room. He stops at the door. He hears his own family in the corridor, planning, word by word, how to take everything while she is too weak to fight. He does not walk in. He steps behind the curtain, and he listens. So does she, in her own way. She calls her CFO. She starts pulling dates from the share records. But what those dates reveal about when this really began. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. The last pin went into the hem at 2 in the morning, and Kiana held it there with 2 fingers until the fabric stopped fighting her. She sat back on her heels. The mannequin above her wore the final piece of the spring collection, ivory silk falling clean to the floor, and she looked at it the way a surgeon looks at a patient who has just started breathing again. Around her the atelier was dark, except for the one lamp over the fitting platform. Everyone else had gone home hours ago. She had told them to. She stood. The room tilted a half-inch to the left and then corrected itself. She waited for it to happen again. It did not. Good. Her throat had a coal in it. Every swallow dragged. She had been swallowing carefully all night, timing it between instructions, so that no one would hear the catch in her voice. Now there was no one to hear, and she coughed once, hard, into the crook of her elbow. The sound bounced off the tall mirrors and came back at her, and she looked around as if someone might have followed it. Empty, just the dresses and her. She pressed the back of her wrist to her forehead. Heat came off her skin the way it comes off a stone that has sat in the sun. She had known since noon. She had a thermometer in the drawer of her desk upstairs, and she had made a decision, around 1 o'clock, not to go get it. A number would make it real. A number would sit in her head and slow her hands, and she needed her hands tonight. Noel Maison launched the collection in 9 days. 9 days. She said the number out loud to the empty room, as if saying it would make the sickness understand that it had picked the wrong week. Her phone lit up on the platform, a message from Hana. Go home. I can see the atelier light from the street. Go home, Kiana. Hana Bell did not sleep either, apparently, and she had driven past to check. Kiana turned the phone face down and finished pinning the sleeve. She loved this hour. That was the truth she never said to anyone. When the building was empty and the phones were dead, and no one needed her to be strong or gracious or bilingual or bulletproof, she could just be a woman with cloth in her hands. She had built all of it from a single rented sewing table 11 years ago, and there were nights she still could not believe the walls belonged to her. The name over the door was her own. Her grandmother's name, really. Noel. She had put it there so the old woman would be somewhere, still, in a city that had never known her. She crouched again anyway. There was a pull in the left seam of the bodice, a hair of tension where the silk wanted to sit one way and the boning underneath wanted another, and it would photograph as a shadow under the lights, and a buyer in the 3rd row would see it and think, cheap. Without knowing why, No one else in the building would have caught it. She had built the building on catching it. She took the seam ripper from her wrist cuff and opened 4 inches of stitching with a sound like a zipper of breath, and she felt the fever tick up a degree at the effort, a bloom of heat behind her ears, and she kept going. Her hands did not shake. That was the thing she checked, always, in the small hours. Not her temperature, not her pulse, her hands. As long as the hands were steady, the woman attached to them was still working, and the day the hands went was the day she would stop. They were steady. She threaded the needle by feel in the near dark and reset the seam 1/8 of an inch over, and the shadow died. She switched off the lamp. In the dark, the mannequin became a pale shape, a bride without a face, and Kiana stood looking at it a moment longer than she meant to. Somewhere in the building, a pipe ticked as the heat cycled down. She thought, not for the first time, that she loved these dresses more honestly than she was allowed to love almost anything else, because a dress never asked her to be born into anything. A dress only asked her to be right. She was very good at being right. Then she went up. Her office was on the mezzanine, glass on 3 sides, the city spread out below in a grid of amber. She did not turn the light on. She sat in her chair and let her head go back and closed her eyes, and for exactly 1 minute she did not hold anything up. Her shoulders came down, her jaw unclenched, the coal in her throat glowed. The phone buzzed again. Not Hannah this time. "Dinner tomorrow. Father expects us at 7. Do not be late again." Mi ran. Her husband's sister typed the way she spoke, in flat sentences that landed like closing doors. Again. Kiana had been late once, 8 months ago, because a supplier in Milan had called during a crisis, and she had taken it in the car. She had apologized that night. She had apologized the following week. The word, again, had been waiting in Miran's mouth ever since. Saved up, ready. Kiana typed back. "We'll be there at 7, looking forward to it." She read it twice. She deleted. Looking forward to it. And let it stand at, "We'll be there at 7. Then she put the phone in her bag, in the inside pocket, the one with the zipper, and she went to find her husband's car in the garage below. Junho was in the passenger seat, awake, his eyes open in the dark. He had sent the driver home. He did that when he knew she would be late. He waited himself so that she would not step into an empty garage alone. He never made it a gift. He simply was there. She got in behind the wheel because she liked to drive when she was tired. It gave her hands something honest to do. He watched her for a moment. "You're warm," he said. He had not touched her. "It's warm in here." He reached over and laid the back of 2 fingers against her neck, under her ear, the way you would test a kettle. His hand was cool and dry. He left it there 1 second, 2, and then took it away and said nothing, which was worse than if he had said something. Junho's silences had grammar. She had learned to read them across 4 years of marriage, the way she read a seam, by the tension in it. 9 days, she said, answering the thing he had not asked. "After the launch, I'll sleep for a week. I promise." He looked out the windshield. The dragon on the left side of his neck disappeared into his collar. "Miran texted you," he said. "Not a question. 7 o'clock, your father expects us." Something moved in his jaw and then went still. He was the quiet one. That was what the men who feared him called him, when they were sure he could not hear, and some of them found out that he could. In their own house, he was quieter still. He put his hand over hers on the gear shift and did not squeeze it, just rested it there, warm now from her skin, and they drove home through streets that belonged to other people who were sleeping. She did not sleep much. She lay with her back against his chest and counted his heartbeats, until the number stopped meaning anything, and somewhere near dawn, the fever broke into a sweat that soaked the sheet, and she thought, "There, it's passing, it's just a cold," and she believed it because she wanted to. The day ate itself the way her days did. Fittings, a call with the fabric mill, a photographer who wanted to reschedule and could not, an intern who cried in the sample room and had to be gathered up and set back on her feet. Kiana drank tea until her stomach turned and pretended it was for the taste. By 4 in the afternoon, the coal in her throat had spread down into her chest, and every breath had a floor to it, a place it stopped short of. Hannah caught her on the stairs at 5. "You look gray," Hannah said. She had a tablet against her hip and amber glasses pushed up into her cropped hair, and she looked at Kiana the way a CFO looks at a number that does not reconcile. "I'm fine." "You're gray, Kiana. That's not a color a person is." "I have dinner at the Seos. I'll rest after." Hannah's mouth did a thing it did, a small flat press, when she was choosing not to say the whole sentence in her head. She had been with Noelle Maison 7 years. She had opinions about the Seos she had voiced, exactly twice, and then folded away when she saw it cost more than it bought. "Eat something before you go," she said instead. "Real food. You can't survive on tea and spite." "I don't run on spite." "Everybody in this building runs on spite. It's the only renewable resource we've got." Hannah said it dry, and it pulled a laugh out of Kiana that turned, halfway, into a cough she could not stop, and she had to grip the rail while it went through her, 3 of them, 4, until her eyes watered. When it finished, Hannah was not laughing anymore. "That's a chest cough," Hannah said, quiet. "That's down in there." "It's a dry building." Kiana straightened her jacket, the ivory one, the tailored one she wore like armor when she went to that house. "I have to change. I'll see you tomorrow." "Kiana," Hannah's voice changed. It dropped the dry edge and got flat and level. The voice she used for the one meeting a year where the numbers were bad and someone had to say so. "I've watched you carry this house on your spine since you were 28. I've watched you charm banks that wanted to see a husband's signature, and I've watched you outwork 3 studios with double our staff. So believe me when I tell you I'm not being soft. You're sick. Not tired. Sick. There's a difference, and you of all people know it, and you're pretending you don't, because pretending is cheaper than 9 days from now." Kiana looked at her over the rail. For 1 second, she let the mask come off, just with Hannah, just for the length of a breath, and Hannah saw whatever was underneath it and did not flinch, which was why Kiana kept her close. "After the launch," Kiana said, quiet, "I promise you, after the launch I'll fall apart in a proper bed with proper doctors, and you can say you told me so for a week straight, but not in the next 9 days. The collection doesn't get to see me flinch, and neither does that family I'm having dinner with tonight." Hannah's jaw worked. She wanted to fight it. She had the whole argument loaded, and Kiana watched her decide, the way she had decided twice before in 7 years, that the cost of winning it was higher than the cost of losing it. "Eat before you go," Hannah said again, because it was the one order she could still give. "And take the good coat. It's cold and you're running hot. And that's how a fever turns into something with a name." "I always take the good coat." Hannah let her go, but she watched her all the way up the stairs, and Kiana felt the watching on her back like a hand. The Seo house sat behind a wall in the hills, old money pretending it had always been there, though the family had bought the land within Dongwook's own lifetime, and everyone knew it, and no one said it. The gate opened before Kiana touched the buzzer. Someone was always watching that gate. Junho met her in the courtyard. He had come straight from the port, and he still had the charcoal overcoat on over the charcoal suit, and standing there in the blue evening, he looked like a piece cut out of the dark. He did not smile. He put his hand at the small of her back, once, and she felt through the silk of her jacket that the gesture meant, I'm here. And be careful. And I'm sorry. All at once, 3 words in one palm. How is your throat? He said, low, in the second before the door opened. Gone, she lied. Better. The door opened. Dinner at the Seo house was a performance with assigned parts, and Kiana's part was to be gracious and quiet and grateful, and she had played it well enough for 4 years that she could do it with a fever. The long table, the lacquer, Dong-wook at the head in his grey hanbok, the jade ring on his right hand catching the light, his cane hooked over the arm of his chair, though he did not need it to sit. Miran on his right, in black, pearls the size of grapes at her throat, her bob so sharp it looked drawn on. Hyuntae across, the cousin, the executive, his glasses reflecting the candles, so that for whole minutes you could not see his eyes, and an empty chair, always, for the mother who had died before Kiana ever came, a place set for her with an empty bowl, tradition, a hunger no one filled. Kiana bowed to Dong-wook the correct number of degrees. She had practiced it in a mirror once, early on, until her back learned it. The old man received it without moving. You are pale, Dong-wook said. He said it in Korean. I've been working late, Abionim, Kiana answered. In Korean, too. She had spent 4 years and a great deal of her small remaining pride learning this language, and she was good at it now, better than good, but she was not born to it, and there were sounds that lived a half tone off in her mouth, and this table heard every one. Miran set down her chopsticks. Not. Abionim, she said, softly, correcting a child. You use the intimate form, as if you were born to it. It is. Abionim. And she said the same word Kiana had just said, but with the vowel pulled a fraction longer, the tone lifted, the difference so small that only someone lying in wait for it would have caught it. There, you hear it. The respect is in the length of the sound. The candles moved. No one else spoke. Kiana felt the heat climb her neck, and she could not tell anymore how much of it was the fever, and how much was her body doing what bodies do. Thank you, she said. In Korean. She said the word again, correctly, or as correctly as her mouth could make it, and it came out fine, it came out clean, and Miran watched her lips form it, and gave a small nod that was worse than a slap because it was patient. A server refilled the old man's cup. The empty bowl at the mother's place caught the candlelight, and Kiana, who had learned to read this room the way she read cloth, saw that no one looked at it, and everyone knew exactly where it was. She had asked Junho about it once, early. He had said only that his mother had set the table for the family every night for 30 years, and that his father had decided she would go on doing it. He had not said it warmly, he had not said it coldly, he had said it the way he said everything at that house, which was as little as the sentence would allow. Dong-wook watched all of this and let it happen, and ate a piece of fish. Junho, beside her, did not move. His hand was on his own knee under the table, and it was closed. She could not see it, but she knew the shape of it. He never spoke at these dinners unless spoken to, and his father never spoke to him unless it was to hand him a task, and the 2 men had built a silence between them, so old and so load-bearing that the whole house leaned on it. The girl works too hard, Dong-wook said, to the table, in the third person, as if Kiana were down the hall. For dresses. A wife works this hard. People ask what the husband is failing to provide. He provides everything, Kiana said, before she could stop it. In Korean, and it came out even, it came out warm, she made sure of that. I work because I love the work, Abionim, not from need. A silence with a floor in it. Miran picked her chopsticks back up. Of course, she said. Everyone can see the business is a hobby that got out of hand. she smiled. It is charming, really. My brother married a woman with a hobby and a great deal of energy. In my grandmother's time, a wife brought her husband's family standing, land, a name that opened doors that were already open. She turned a piece of vegetable over, examined it, ate it. New money buys the dress. It cannot buy the room the dress walks into. That you are born into, or you spend your whole life at the door of it, knocking, thinking the sound is getting louder. There it was. Kiana had waited 4 years for someone at this table to simply say it plainly, and here it was, laid down between the dishes like a knife set out for use. She held her water glass and did not drink from it, because she did not trust her throat not to close on the swallow and turn it into a cough. And a cough now would look like weakness, and weakness at this table was blood in water. She held the glass. She looked at Miran, and she let 3 seconds go by, which was 2 seconds longer than Miran expected, and she watched the older woman's certainty flicker just at the edge, just for an instant, before it resettled. You're right that I wasn't born into this room, Kiana said. Evenly. In English now, on purpose, because there were things her own tongue could carry that the borrowed one dropped. I built the room I was born into, and then I built a few more. For a moment, no one filled the quiet. A log settled in the grate. Then Hyun-tae laughed, a small dry sound meant to smooth the table over, and said, in English, "Careful. The collection does well, I hear. The pre-orders, somebody sent me the number." He adjusted his glasses. It's a very good number, for a hobby. He smiled to show it was a joke, and it was not a joke, and everyone at the table understood which of the two it was. It's a very good number for anything, Kiana said. She kept her voice light. She had learned that too, in this house, the way to hold a blade flat so it looked like a spoon. You should have your people pull the growth curve sometime, Hyun-tae. It might teach the shipping side a thing or two about margins. The cousin's smile stayed exactly where it was, but behind the glasses, something moved, quick, and was put away, and Kiana filed it without knowing yet that she would need it. Across the table, Miran's eyes went from Kiana to Hyun-tae and back, weighing, and the pearls at her throat rose and fell once. Hyun-tae's glasses caught the light and hid his eyes. Dong-wook set down his chopsticks with a small click. Enough, he said, in Korean, to the whole table, but his cloudy eyes were on Kiana. In this house, we do not answer our elders with speeches. My son chose you. That is his affair. But you sit at my table. You sit as a daughter sits. Quiet, grateful, beautiful is not a thing you do here. It is a thing you are, and then you are still. Kiana looked down at her hands. She thought of 100 things to say, and she said none of them, and the choosing not to say them was a physical act, like holding a door shut against a wind. She thought of the atelier. She thought of the ivory dress standing faceless in the dark. She thought of the child she and Junho had begun, in the last year, to talk about in the low voices you use for a thing you are afraid to want too loudly. A child who would carry both their names and this poison both, who would sit at this table one day and be measured. She swallowed the whole speech down into the coal in her chest, where it caught and burned and stayed. Yes, Abeonim, she said. The word came out perfectly, every tone in its place. She had learned it at last. It only cost her everything to say. Dong-wook nodded, satisfied, and the dinner went on around the shape of what had happened, the way dinners do, the servers coming and going, the courses replacing themselves, and Kiana sat straight in her chair, with her fever climbing quietly behind her eyes, and played her part to the last line. Under the table, without looking at her, Junho moved his closed hand from his own knee to hers. He opened it there. He laid his palm flat over the back of her hand and pressed once, hard, and held it, and she understood that this was the only argument he was allowed to make in his father's house, and that he was making all of it. She turned her hand over under his and gave him her fingers. They did not look at each other. Across the table, Mi-ran was telling Dong-wook something about the shipping company, numbers, tonnage, her voice smooth as poured oil, and the old man was listening to his daughter the way he never listened to his son, and Hyun-tae was nodding along, and the empty chair sat with its empty bowl, and the candles burned down. In the car afterward, Kiana drove again, because her hands needed the honest thing to do, and Jun-ho sat with his overcoat still on and watched the gate close behind them in the mirror. "You shouldn't have answered her," he said, not angry, almost the opposite. "I know. It costs more than it buys. I know that too." She took the turn out of the hills. Below them, the city came up cold and bright. "I did it anyway. Once. In 4 years." She glanced at him. "Let me have the one." He looked at her a long moment in the passing light. Something in the hard line of his face gave, at the very edge of it, the way a wall gives at the mortar before anywhere else. "You have it," he said. She smiled. It hurt her chest to smile. She would remember, later, that this was the last easy night. That she drove her husband home through the amber grid with his hand warm on her knee, and a fever she had decided to ignore, and a collection 9 days out, and a name over a door, and a child not yet begun, and that she had all of it, every piece of it, whole in her 2 hands, and did not know how much a person could hold, right up until the moment the floor of the chest gives out. But that was later. That night she only drove, and coughed once at a red light and covered it with the radio, and got them home, and lay down again with her back against his chest, and counted his heartbeats until the numbers came loose and floated, and the coal in her chest glowed all through the dark and waited, patient as Mi-ran, for its hour. The seam ripper slipped and drew a thin red line across Kiana's thumb, and she did not notice until the blood printed itself on the ivory silk. She noticed the silk first, $900 a meter, and now a rust-brown comma of her own making sat 2 inches from the hem. She pressed her thumb into her mouth and reached for the stain stick with her free hand, and found that her free hand was heavier than a hand should be. 6 days to the launch. She said the number to herself the way other people said prayers. The atelier was empty at that hour, the way she liked it. The cutting tables ran the length of the room under cold white light, forms wearing half-finished garments like patient ghosts. Kiana worked the stain out with a cotton bud, small circles, and the small circles made her wrist ache in a place a wrist should not ache. She set the bud down. She breathed. The breath went in with a sound like paper tearing. Her phone lit on the table. "Hana. Go home. I mean it this time." She had said it this time last night, too. Kiana turned the phone face down, and the motion cost her more than it should have. She stood to pin the hem, and the room tilted a quarter turn, gently, the way a boat leans, and then it kept leaning. She caught the edge of the table. The steel bit her palm. Good. Pain was information. She waited for the floor to lie back down. It did not lie back down. There was a moment where she understood, with a clarity that felt almost like relief, that she had lost this argument, not to Mi-ran, not to Dong-wook, to the thing in her chest that had been counting the days too, patient as she was, and had reached its own number first. Her knees found the floor before her hands did, the last thing she managed, before the white light folded down to a coin and the coin winked out, was to turn her body so she would not fall against the dress. They found her at 6. The night cleaner, a woman named Rosa who mopped the 3rd floor and had done for years, saw the light still on and the wrong shape on the ground and dropped her bucket and ran the wrong direction before she ran the right one. The dial tone, her own voice too high, the address said twice, because the first time it came out in Spanish. By the time the paramedics lifted Kiana onto the board, her lips had gone the color of the inside of a shell, and one of them said a word to the other, quiet, and the other one moved faster. Hannah got the call in her kitchen with a coffee halfway to her mouth. She did not finish the sentence the coffee was interrupting. She was in the car before the mug stopped rocking on the counter. The hospital took Kiana behind doors that swung and kept swinging. Sepsis, someone said, and then said it again to a different clipboard. Pneumonia that had walked into the blood and set up house. Serious. The word serious used carefully, weighed out, the way careful people used it. Serious, but not the other word. Treatable. Antibiotics through a line. Fluids. Oxygen threaded under her nose. A monitor turning her heart into a green mountain range that climbed and fell and climbed. She surfaced twice in the first hours and went back under both times. Junho arrived without a coat. This was the detail the floor nurse would remember, because men like that always had coats, the long, dark, expensive kind, and this one had come in shirt sleeves with the cuffs still buttoned, as though he had stood up from a table and simply started walking and had not stopped walking until he reached this corridor. He gave the nurse his wife's name. He gave it once. The nurse, who had spent 11 years learning to read the difference between the frightened and the dangerous, looked at his face and could not decide which he was, and told him room 14, and told him quietly. He went to room 14. He stood at the glass a while before he opened the door. Through it, he could see the shape of her under the thin blanket, smaller than he had ever let himself think of her as being. The satin robe someone had gotten her into instead of the surgical gown, pale pink, the fine chain still at her throat because no one had thought to take it, or she had not let them, her hair loose across the pillow, all that weight of it, dark at the root and burning gold at the ends under the fluorescent light, the oxygen line, the tube in the back of her hand taped down with a square of clear film. He put his palm flat on the glass and took it away before it could leave a mark. Then he heard the voices. They came from around the corner, from the family lounge at the end of the hall, and they carried the way voices carry in tiled places at dawn when there is no one else to soak them up. He knew both of them before he had taken a step. He had known them his whole life. He stopped where he was, in the little alcove where the linen cart stood, half behind the wall, and he did not mean to listen. He meant to walk to them. His sister, his father, his family, come at dawn to a hospital, as families do. His father's voice, low, gravel-worn smooth. How bad? Bad enough, Miran. The doctor used the word intubation, and then said, probably not. Probably. You understand what probably buys us. A pause. The soft complaint of a chair taking his father's weight. It buys us the window, Miran said, when the chair was quiet. The one we have been waiting on. Junho's hand found the edge of the linen cart. He should step out now. That was the thing his body was built for. Stepping out, filling a doorway, ending a conversation with the fact of himself. He had done it in rooms far worse than this one. He did not do it now. Something in his sister's voice, the evenness of it, the way it climbed no higher for the venue, held him still against the wall like a hand on his sternum. Keep your voice down, his father said. There is no one. Miran, dismissive. And then, because she could never resist the ledger, because she loved the shape of a plan spoken aloud the way some people loved music. Listen to me, Abeonim. She is unconscious. When she wakes, she will be weak for weeks, frightened, grateful to anyone who tells her the fire is out. That is the window, not after. During what? During the part where she cannot count. The cart's metal edge was cold. Junho watched his own knuckles go pale on it and made them let go, one finger at a time. A third voice now, thinner, quicker, threaded with nerves. Hyuntae. Jun-ho had not heard him come. The instrument is drafted. Paper. The crisp, small sound of a folder opening. Durable power of attorney. Broad grant. It gives the holder authority over the business interests, the holdings, the accounts, all of it, for the duration of her incapacity. Her signature and one witness. I can be the witness. You will not be the witness, Miran said. A cousin witnessing is a story a lawyer tells later to unwind it. Abionim witnesses, a grieving father-in-law, at the bedside, helping a sick daughter, put her affairs in order, while she is too ill to manage them. That is not a story anyone unwinds. Silence. In the silence, Jun-ho could hear the monitor through the wall behind him, the small electronic report of his wife's heart, and he found he was breathing in time with it, in on the climb, out on the fall. Say the number, his father said. Hyuntae's paper again. The maison alone, trademark, the archive, the licensing, the pre-orders, the whole spring line, 6 days out. Before you count the property in her name, and the accounts she never mingled with ours. He named a figure. He named it the way a man names something he has practiced saying, so it will sound smaller. It did not sound smaller. And the shipping, his father said, and there was something under the words, something careful, and Jun-ho, who had spent 38 years learning to hear what his father put under words, heard it. The shipping is a separate conversation, Miran said, too quickly. It was not separate last month. It is separate now, Abionim. Her tone closed on it like a drawer. Her assets are clean and large, and sitting in the hand of a woman who cannot lift her own head. We take the clean thing. We do not muddy it by dragging the other conversation across the table in a hospital at 6 in the morning. One thing at a time. This thing first. Jun-ho understood 2 facts in the same instant, and they arrived with the flat weight of stones dropped into still water. The first was that his sister meant every word. The second was that the shipping business, the tonnage his father was so proud of, the oldest clean thing the family owned, was not clean at all, and his sister was steering the old man away from it, the way you steer a car, away from a wall you do not want him to see. He filed the second fact. He had nowhere to put it yet. He filed it. 2 floors down, Hannah Bell was wearing a track into the lobby tile. She had given the desk Kiana's name 3 times and gotten family only twice, and the 3rd time she had leaned across the counter and said, "Lo, I am closer than family and I run her money, and if you make me stand here, I will make calls that end up on your director's desk before your shift does." They had let her sit. She sat. She did not sit well. She had a tablet in her lap and had opened it 4 times and closed it 4 times because there was nothing on it that a hospital respected. She watched the elevator and did the only arithmetic she had, which was the arithmetic of a woman who had said, "You are sick, not tired," and been thanked and ignored, and who now sat in a plastic chair adding up all the ways she had let herself be thanked and ignored. She did not know a folder was open on the floor above her. She only knew, in the animal part of a CFO who had watched this family for 7 years, that hospitals brought out of people whatever they already were, and that she did not trust a single one of the ones upstairs. "She calls me Abeonim with the wrong tone," his father said, apropos of nothing, apropos of everything. Tired. 4 years, and she still puts the weight on the wrong part of the word. "She puts her name on our masthead and calls it marriage," Miran said. "The tone is the least of it. Jun-ho will not stand for this." The old man's voice, testing the sentence, not believing it. She is his wife. And here Miran laughed, once, low, and the sound of it went into Jun-ho like the cold from the cart, deeper. "Jun-ho," she said, "does what the family needs. He always has. He will be told what is best for her, that she is protected, that we are keeping the vultures off her while she is down, and he will nod, Because he is the quiet one, and the quiet one has never once in his life chosen a woman over the name. A pause. Besides, by the time he understands the shape of it, it will already have a shape. Signed, witnessed, filed. You cannot argue with a document, little brother. She said it to the empty hall, to the version of him she carried in her head, and she said it fond, almost, the way you speak of a dog that will not bite. Behind the wall, the real one closed his eyes. He stood very still. He had learned stillness in rooms where stillness was the only thing that kept you breathing, and he used all of it now. He did not step out. He did not let the cart move. He counted the green mountains of his wife's heart through the tile, and he memorized. He was good at this. It was the one gift the family had ever truly given him and never known they were giving, the ability to sit inside a room where he was being sold and remember every word of the price. And if she refuses to sign, his father said, when she wakes, if she has the strength to refuse, then we do not ask her when she has strength. Miran, patient with him, the way you are patient with a slow child. We ask her at the worst hour. At 3 a.m, when the fever spikes and she is afraid, and the nurse has just left, and there is a kind face at the bed with a pen. People sign anything at 3 a.m, Abionim, and if she is proud, if she wants to prove she is well enough to manage her own affairs, then we let her prove it. We let her sit up and take the pen and show us all how strong she is. Pride signs faster than fear. I have watched it my whole life. A silence, and then, quieter, the closest thing to feeling Junho had heard from her all morning. She thinks the tone of a word is what makes you a Seo. She has no idea what it costs. His father said nothing. The chair creaked. Somewhere a cart wheeled past on the floor below, and Junho waited it out. Miran was still talking, the mechanics of it now. Which lawyer would file, and in what order, and how the pre-orders would be held in escrow, for her protection, until the incapacity was formally recognized, and how the launch 6 days out, would be quietly postponed, given the circumstances, and how a postponed launch was a leaking launch, and a leaking launch was a devalued asset, and a devalued asset was cheaper to absorb. She had thought about the dress on the form in the empty atelier. She had thought about all of it. She had been thinking about it, Junho understood, for longer than his wife had been sick. That was the thing that finally moved his feet, not the theft, the date of it. Longer than she has been sick. You do not draft a durable power of attorney in the 4 hours since a woman collapsed. You do not have the trademark valuation to hand, the escrow mechanism named, the witness chosen, and the wrong witness ruled out, unless the document has been waiting in a drawer for its occasion, and the illness was not the reason but only the permission. He turned. He walked, without hurry, the way a man walks who has every right to the hallway, back toward room 14, and his own reflection came at him in the dark glass of a switched-off television, bracketed to the wall, and he did not recognize the face for a half-second, because it was doing nothing at all. Perfect. Empty. A door with the lights off behind it. He went into her room and shut the door with the softness of a man who does not want the latch to click, and it did not click. He sat in the chair beside the bed. He took her hand, the one without the tube, and it was cool and lighter than the other one had ever felt on his arm, across 4 years of dinners. He held it. He did not press it. He was afraid, obscurely, of pressing anything. Her lashes moved. "You're here," she said. Not a question. Her voice came from somewhere far under the surface, dragged up. Her eyes found him, and did not fully open, and found him anyway. "I'm here." The dress. Her fingers tried to close on his, and managed a fraction of it. I fell away from the dress. I turned. I don't think The dress is fine. He did not know if the dress was fine. He would make the dress fine. He would have the dress couriered and cleaned and hung if he had to stand in the atelier himself and hold the light. You turned away from it. You did that right. Something eased in her face at. You did that right. Some old reflex, and it broke something in him to see how little she needed and how rarely she had been given it. How long, she said. How long was I? Hours. It's morning. 6 days. Her eyes came open now, alarm surfacing through the sedation. The launch is in 6. Kiana. I have to. She tried to lift her head off the pillow, and the monitor caught the effort and complained. A sharp electronic stitch, and her head went back down, because it had no choice. You have to lie still, he said. That's the only thing you have to do. She lay still, her eyes stayed on him, and even sick, even hollowed, even with a tube in the back of her hand and her heart being drawn as a line on a screen, she was reading his face the way she read a garment on a form, looking for the seam that was pulling, the place where the drape lied. He watched her look. He held his face empty for her, the way he had held it empty for the hallway. Something's wrong, she said. Besides me. He almost told her then. The words were arranged and waiting behind his teeth. My sister, my father, a paper, a window, they think you cannot count. And he stopped them, because the monitor was still climbing and falling too fast, because whatever was in her blood was still winning the hour, and because a woman fighting to breathe cannot also fight a war, and if she knew right now, she would try to sit up, and she would try to make a call, and she would spend on rage the strength the antibiotics needed to spend on her lungs. Nothing's wrong, he said, that I can't hold for a few hours. Her eyes searched his one more beat. Then, because she was too tired to pull the seam all the way open, or because she trusted the hand she was holding, or both, she let it go. Okay, she said. You hold it. I'll hold it. She slept. Her fingers stayed curled in his, the smallest curl, and he sat inside it and did not move and let the arm go numb rather than shift and wake her. Outside the door, down the tiled hall, his family were still arranging her. He could hear the register of their voices, not the words now, just the music of it, his sister's even line, and his father's low gravel, and Hyun-tae's quick nervous descant. 3 people composing a woman's downfall over vending machine coffee, while she slept 20 steps away, with her husband holding 2 of her fingers. Junho looked at the paper film taping the tube to the back of her hand. He looked at the fine chain at her throat, rising and falling now, steadier than an hour ago, the antibiotics beginning, maybe, to turn the tide the doctors said they would turn. He looked at the green line and let it teach him her heartbeat until he could have drawn it himself. He was the quiet one. His whole life the name had been an insult wearing the clothes of a compliment. The quiet one does what the family needs. The quiet one has never chosen a woman over the name. His sister had said it to an empty hallway with total confidence, and she was, Junho thought, entirely correct about the man he had been for 38 years. She had made only one error, and she did not know she had made it, and he was not going to tell her. The error was this: she had let him hear. He would give her the quiet. He would give her all of it, more of it than she had ever seen from him, weeks of it, a silence so complete and so agreeable that she would mistake it for surrender, and build her whole beautiful machine on top of it. He would nod. He would be told what was best for his wife, and he would nod. He would let the document take its shape, signed, witnessed, filed, exactly as his sister planned, because you cannot argue with a document, but you can outbuild it. You can, if you are patient and quiet, and if by some accident of a linen cart and a hallway at dawn, you know the whole plan before the other side knows you know anything at all. He did the arithmetic in the chair while his wife slept. Not the money, the dates. The trademark valuation Hyun-tae had read out so smoothly could not have been pulled overnight, which meant someone had ordered it weeks ago. The durable power of attorney drafted and refined, which meant weeks. The escrow mechanism, weeks. The wrong witness ruled out, which meant the plan had been rehearsed, argued, corrected. All of it older than the illness. The illness was the key that fit a lock they had cut long before. Which meant one more thing, the thing that made him finally, carefully, curl his own hand a fraction tighter around his wife's, before he caught himself and eased it. If the plan predated the sickness, then somewhere in the family's shipping accounts, in the tonnage his father would not let anyone drag across the table, there was a reason they needed her clean, large, untangled assets so badly that they would sit in a hospital at dawn and call it protection. People do not steal on this scale to be richer. They steal on this scale to fill a hole. And a hole that big, hidden this hard, guarded even from the old man's own eyes, by the daughter who steered him away from the wall. He would find the hole. He had, he thought, looking at the tube and the chain and the climbing green line, about 6 weeks of being the quiet one to find it in. Kiana stirred, not waking, just the body rearranging itself around the fever as it broke. A shift, a long exhale that fogged nothing because of the oxygen, but that he felt on the back of his hand anyway. Warm, alive, hers. Rest, he said, though she could not hear him. I've got it. For once, I've got it. He did not let go of her hand. Down the hall, the voices composed and recomposed her, sure of the quiet man in room 14, sure of the sleeping woman, sure of the paper in the folder and the window they were about to climb through. And the quiet man sat in the dark of the not quite closed door, with every word of theirs laid down inside him, like type set in a press, waiting, and watched his wife's heart draw itself green against the wall, and began, without moving at all, to build. On the third morning, the oxygen line came off. The nurse coiled it with 2 fingers and set it on the tray, and Kiana felt the small, cold absence under her nose like a door left open. She waited until the woman left, then she pushed herself up against the pillows, slow, testing the weight of her own arms, and found them heavier than she wanted, and lighter than the day before. Junho watched her do it from the chair. He had not gone home. His shirt held the crease of a man who had folded himself into a hospital chair for 2 nights, and he wore it the way he wore everything, without comment. "Sit me higher," she said. He came and did it with his hands instead of the bed controls, one palm behind her shoulder blades, the other bracing her elbow, and she let him because it was faster and because it cost her nothing to let him. "There's a chart," she said when she was up, "on the door. I can't read it from here." "You don't need to read it." "Then tell me what it says." He didn't answer the chart. He pulled the chair closer instead, close enough that his knee touched the frame of the bed, and he sat forward with his forearms on his thighs and looked at her the way he looked at a table before he decided who at it was lying. "I need you to listen to me," he said, "without moving your face." Something in her went still that was not fatigue. 4 years had taught her the difference between his quiet that was habit and his quiet that was a room with a lock on it. This was the second kind. "All right. Your father came to this floor the night they brought you in." He kept his voice low, flat, the register of a man reading tide numbers. So did Miran. So did Hyun-tae. They stood at the end of the hall, in the family lounge, and they made a plan. A plan. A paper. Hyun-tae wrote it before you got sick. It signs your business into their hands, while you're too weak to hold it. Your father is the witness. Miran is the one who chose him. Kiana's hand was on the blanket. It stayed on the blanket. She had heard the instruction, "Don't move your face," and she obeyed it the way she had obeyed Dong-wook across 4 years of dinners, from the outside in, the surface flat while the floor of her dropped. "When?" she said. 3 in the morning. That's the hour they picked. Fever, no nurse, a kind face and a pen. No. She shook her head once, a millimeter. When did they write it? He almost smiled. It was the wrong word for what moved in his jaw, but it lived in the same family. That's the right question. That's the only question. He reached out and put 2 fingers on the back of her hand, the same 2 fingers he had once pressed to the heat of her neck in a garage, and he held them there. Weeks ago, the paper had numbers in it. Your archive, your licensing, your pre-orders, all valued. You value a thing before you take it. They started before your lungs did. She looked at the ceiling. The tiles had a water stain shaped like nothing. She used it to hold her eyes still. You were behind the curtain, she said. I was in the hall. You heard all of it. Every word. And you didn't walk out. It wasn't an accusation. She was building the shape of it in her head, the way she built a garment, seam by seam, testing which way the fabric wanted to fall. You let them think you'd sign it with them. I let them think I'm what they've always said I am. Now his voice dropped even further, under the machines. The one who does what the family needs. The one who never chose a woman over the name. She turned her head and found his eyes and did not look away from them, and for one breath the room narrowed to the 12 inches between their faces, and she read every line of it, and she believed him. She had known, some animal part of her had known for 2 days, that the thing wrong in this room was larger than her body. Now it had edges. Okay, she said. That was all. Okay. He had braced for more. She saw him brace, and saw the brace go slack when it wasn't needed. You're not asking me why I waited to tell you. You waited until the oxygen came off. She let a breath out through her nose. You waited until I could do something with it. If you'd told me at 3 in the morning, with a tube in my hand, I'd have cried, and they'd have won. You know me. Don't insult us both. He took his fingers off her hand and sat back, and something in his shoulders that had been carrying 2 nights of weight set part of it down. Then, here's the shape of it, he said. We agree on one thing before the nurse comes back. To all of them, my father, my sister, that boy with the glasses, we know nothing. You're grateful for the family gathered close. I'm the quiet son doing his duty. We give Miran exactly the story she already believes, and we let her keep believing it until it's too expensive to stop. We play dead. You play weak, I play obedient. Same coin. Kiana looked at the door with the chart on it she couldn't read. Somewhere past it was a hallway, and past that a lounge, and past that a city where her name hung on a building she had bought with 11 years of 2 in the morning. There's a problem with your coin, she said. Tell me. I'm going to recover faster than they think. She flexed the hand he had held, watched the fingers close and open. I can already feel it. Another day of this, and I'll be lying with my whole body every time I let them look at me. I can play weak. I can't play dying. Not for 6 weeks. Then we don't tell anyone how fast you're healing. He said it without a pause, as if he'd already set the piece down on that square. Not the family, not the office, not Hana, until you decide. The doctors say what they say. We let the family hear only the frightening half. You want me to lie to my own CFO? I want you to choose the hour you stop. She was quiet. Through the wall, a cart rolled by, wheels ticking over a floor seam. She waited until it passed. Bring me my phone, she said. Hana Bell came at noon and had to argue her way onto the floor, and Kiana heard the argument before she saw her, the specific cadence of a woman who managed 9 figures being told she was not on a list. When the door finally opened, Hana stopped 2 steps inside it and put a hand flat against the doorframe, as if the room might tilt. "You look," Hannah started. "Don't." Kiana lifted one finger off the blanket. "Whatever it is, don't say it. Sit down. Close the door. Where's your tablet?" "In my bag." "Kiana, you were in the ICU. I was in a room. Sit." She glanced at Junho. He rose without being asked, buttoned nothing, and moved toward the door. "He's going to stand in the hall and be a wall," Kiana said. "That's his whole job for the next 10 minutes. Junho paused at the door. 10 minutes, he said, to Hannah, not to his wife. "If the tall woman with the pearls comes off the elevator, I'll cough." Hannah looked between the two of them, the sick woman propped on pillows, and the man in the 2-day shirt, and whatever she had been carrying up in the elevator rearranged itself in her face. She sat. She took the tablet out. She did not ask a single one of the questions crowding behind her teeth, and that was why Kiana had hired her 7 years ago. "Cap table," Kiana said. "Noelle Maison. Pull the full ownership record. Every entity, every transfer, going back 3 years. I want dates." Hannah's thumbs stopped over the glass. "Why am I looking at our own cap table? Because I think someone's been reading it before us." The tablet woke. Hannah worked in silence, the way she worked, and Kiana watched the woman's eyes move down columns she herself had built, and, in building, had thought were solid ground. The room made its small hospital sounds. In the hallway, Junho stood with his back to the wall and his hands loose at his sides, a man doing nothing, watching an elevator. "Here's ownership," Hannah said. "You. Founder's stock, the employee pool, the 2 silent positions from the Milan financing." She scrolled. "Clean. It's always been clean. Silent positions." Kiana's voice sharpened by a degree. "Who's behind them now?" "They're held through nominees, investment vehicles. We took the money, and we don't ask who's at the bottom of the box. That was the whole—" Hannah stopped. Her thumb hovered. "That was the whole point of taking it that way. Passive money, no board seat." "Read me the names of the vehicles." Hannah read them. 3 of them. Gray corporate names. The kind of name a company wears, the way a man wears a plain coat to not be seen. Kiana closed her eyes and let the names sit in the dark behind her lids, and one of them turned a key. "That second one," she said. "When did it acquire its position?" Hannah checked. 14 months ago it took the first tranche. Then, she scrolled, and her posture changed, the small straightening of a person who has just seen the number they were told they would not see. Then it added, quietly, 3 more times. "Dates, Hannah. I need the dates. 9 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago." Hannah looked up. "The last one cleared 11 days before you collapsed." The room was very quiet. Kiana kept her face flat because there was still a chart on the door she couldn't read, and a woman with pearls, who might come off an elevator, but under the blanket her whole body had gone to a single cold point. "Say the first date again," she said. 9 weeks ago." "I wasn't sick 9 weeks ago." She opened her eyes. "I was in Paris 9 weeks ago, choosing silk. I was well. I was building the spring line. Nobody in that family had any reason to think I'd so much as sneeze." She let that hang, and let Hannah walk toward it herself, because a thing you reach on your own, you never doubt. "So why was somebody buying into my company while I was standing in a French warehouse, feeling perfect?" Hannah set the tablet down on the blanket, screen up, as if it had grown warm. "Because they weren't waiting for you to get sick," she said slowly. "They were already coming. Getting sick just gave them a faster road." Kiana finished it. "The illness didn't start this. The illness was a gift they hadn't planned on. They'd been walking toward the front door for over a year, and then I fell down in the hallway and left the back one open." In the corridor, Junho did not cough. He stood and listened to the machines through the door and to the shape of his wife's voice climbing out of the sickbed, one register at a time, and a muscle moved once in his jaw. Hannah took her glasses off, the amber frames folding into her fist, and pressed the heel of her hand against one eye. I sat in that lobby for 6 hours, she said, low. I sat there thinking you might die, and 2 floors up they were. She stopped. She put the glasses back on. When she spoke again, the wet had gone out of it, and the steel had come in. What do you want me to do? 3 things. Kiana held up her hand and folded the fingers down as she counted, and her voice had found the thing it did in a boardroom, the thing that made grown investors sit forward. First, trace that second vehicle to the bottom of the box. I want a human name. Somebody signed something somewhere. Find the signature. That could take. Find the signature. Second, a finger down. Don't move a dollar. Don't change a lock. Nothing they can see. If they've been reading our cap table for a year, they'll notice the day we start acting like we know. We don't act like we know. We act like a frightened little house whose queen is in the hospital. Hannah's mouth flattened. And third, Kiana's hand closed into a fist and rested on the blanket. You tell no one. Not my second, not legal, not the board. This lives in your tablet and my head and nowhere else. The day it lives in a 4th place is the day I lose. Hannah looked at the fist. Then she looked at the woman it belonged to, and whatever she had walked in prepared to nurse, she folded up and put away. I've watched that family belittle you for 7 years, Hannah said. At every dinner you came back from with your jaw set. I always wanted to say something, and you always told me the same thing. Do you remember what you told me? I don't. You said, they think a woman who builds is a woman who's still hungry. Let them. A hungry woman remembers where the food is. Hannah stood, tablet under her arm, Kohler catching the fluorescent light. I'll have your signature by the weekend. Hannah, Kiana stopped her at the door. Whoever's at the bottom of that box, when you find the name. She let the sentence choose its own end. Don't be surprised if it's a woman. Hannah held her eyes for a moment. Then she opened the door, and Junho straightened off the wall, and the 2 of them passed each other in the doorway, like ships that had agreed, without a word, to fly the same false colors. He came back in and shut the door, and did not sit. He stood at the foot of the bed with his hands in his pockets and looked at her, and she looked back. And for a while neither of them filled the silence, because they were both good at silence, and it was one of the reasons the marriage had held in a family built to break it. You heard, she said. Enough. 14 months, the first tranche. She let her head fall back against the pillow, not from weakness now, but from the specific tiredness of a thing turning out to be older and colder than you feared. I sat at their table 3 days a week for 14 months, thinking the worst thing in that house was Miran's mouth, and the whole time there was a paper walking toward me under the floor. Junho took one hand out of his pocket and set something on the wheeled tray table and rolled it to her. A folded sheet of hospital notepaper, the cheap kind from the drawer by the bed. She opened it. On it, in his small, hard architect's hand, were columns, entities, numbers, arrows. He had been building on paper what she and Hannah had just found on a screen, and he had gotten there first, 2 nights ago, sitting in the dark. You already knew about the second vehicle, she said. I knew there had to be one. I didn't have the name of it until your woman read it out through the door. He tapped the paper with one finger. But I know something she can't find in a cap table, because it isn't in a cap table. It's in a warehouse. The shipping. His eyes moved to her, sharp, and she saw that she had surprised him, and she was glad of it, because a man who is never surprised by his wife is a man who has stopped looking. You knew about the shipping? I've been needling Hyun-tae about their margins at dinner for a year. It's the one place his face moves. She refolded his paper along his creases. Precise, the reflex of a woman who has spent her life respecting the way a thing wants to fold. Tell me what's in the warehouse. A hole. He came around the bed and sat, finally, on the edge of it, near her knees, which he had not done in this room before, and the mattress dipped. The night in the hall, my father said the word shipping, and Miran cut him off like he'd said something obscene. She hid it from him. Her own father, the man whose chair sits at the head of that table. Whatever's wrong with the freight side, she doesn't want him to know how wrong. How wrong do you think it is? Wrong enough to reach for your company to cover it. He said it and let it land. You don't take a healthy woman's fashion house to feel powerful. Power they already have. You take it because you need the money in it, fast, and you need it before someone opens a different book. My sister isn't hungry, Kiana. My sister is drowning, and she's decided to climb out of the water on your back. Kiana was quiet for a long moment. Outside the window, the afternoon had gone flat and white. On the tray, his paper sat folded into a small, hard rectangle. Then we don't just defend, she said. No. Defending is what they expect from the frightened little house. She pushed herself an inch higher against the pillows, and this time she did it herself, without his hand, and they both noticed and neither said. If I only wall off what's mine, I win a fight in a hallway, and I lose the war, because in a year, there's another paper, and I'm older, and maybe there's a child by then, and I'm slower to the door. Her jaw set at the word child. She moved past it. I don't want to keep the door shut. I want the debt. He went still. Say that again. The hole in the warehouse. Her voice had dropped to match his, the two of them building the thing between them in a register no monitor could hear. Somebody's holding it. Banks, private lenders, whoever floats a drowning shipping line. That paper is for sale. The way distressed paper is always for sale. At a discount, to anyone quiet enough not to spook the borrower. She looked at him. I have quiet money. I have a French financing vehicle, and a Milan one, and a name nobody at that table respects enough to watch. What happens, Seo Junho, if the woman your family is trying to rob becomes the person your family owes? For a moment he didn't move at all, and then he did the thing he almost never did, the thing she had seen maybe 4 times in 4 years. He laughed. Once, low, from the chest, gone as fast as it came, but real. You want to buy their debt while they think they're taking your company. I want to hold the rope she's climbing. Kiana lay back. The cold point under the blanket had become something else now. Something with a temperature but no fear in it. She reaches for my house with one hand. I take the floor out from under her feet with the other. And nobody sees me do it, because I'm the sick girl in the pink robe who married up and doesn't understand tradition. He picked his folded paper up off the tray and turned it over in his fingers, and when he spoke there was a thing in his voice she had waited 4 years, through every silent dinner, to hear him aim at his own blood. They'll bring you the power of attorney, he said, soon, while you still look like this. My sister won't be able to help herself. She has a hole and every day it gets deeper, and a signed paper is the shovel. He met her eyes. You'll have to sign something, to keep them sure, to keep them reaching. Can you do that? Can you sign a paper handing them your life and go home and sleep? What would I be handing them, really? She said it slow, feeling the ground of it, and she saw him see her get there. If everything that matters is already moved, if the thing they think they're taking is an empty room with my name on the door, an empty holding, he said quietly, a box with nothing in it. Then let them take the box. Kiana turned her head on the pillow and looked at the door with the chart on it, the chart she still could not read, and for the first time in 3 days she did not care what it said, because she had stopped measuring her life by what a doctor wrote, and started measuring it by what she would build in the dark while a whole family congratulated itself on winning. Get me Hana back tomorrow, and a lawyer who's never eaten at your father's table. We're going to move a house without anyone hearing the furniture drag. He sat back down. There was a thing he did before he committed a plan to the world, a slowness, and she had learned to wait through it. The paper in the warehouse won't be sitting in one place, he said. A hole that size gets carved up. A bank holds a piece. A private fund holds a piece. Somewhere, there's a lender who was promised a return that stopped coming, and that lender is the softest. You buy the soft one first. Quietly, through your Milan box, not your name. You never let two pieces know you bought both. How long? To gather enough of it that I own the room she's standing in? He turned the folded paper over once more. Weeks, maybe the 6 I already gave myself. It fits the same clock. He looked up. But there's a risk you should hold in your hand before you agree to it. If Miran learns her debt is being bought before we're ready, she runs to my father with a version where you're the villain, the foreign wife circling the family like a creditor. She'll make it a story about blood, and my father has never once lost a story about blood. Then we buy faster than she can tell it. Kiana didn't blink. And we make sure that when the story finally gets told, I'm the one holding every page. You said it yourself. You don't argue with a document. She let the corner of her mouth lift. So I'll bring documents. You'll bring documents, he echoed. And there was something in it that was almost pride and almost fear. The two things a man feels watching the person he loves pick up a weapon he wasn't sure they could lift. One more thing. She caught his sleeve as he moved. When they come with their power of attorney and I sign it, and I hand my whole life across a hospital tray with a shaking hand, you'll be in the room, and you'll say nothing. You'll watch me do it, and you'll let them believe you let them win. Her fingers tightened. That's the hardest part of this, and it's yours, not mine. Can you stand there and watch your sister humiliate your wife and hold your face? He looked at her for a long moment. I held it for 2 nights in the dark, he said. I can hold it in the light. Junho stood. He crossed to the door, and with his hand on it he stopped and looked back at her against the pillows, small in the pink robe, the chain thin at her throat, the fever gone out of her face, and something else come into it. And whatever he had married her believing about her, he was, in that moment, revising upward. You should be frightened, he said, not a warning, something closer to wonder. I was frightened for 11 years that I'd never build the thing. She closed her eyes. I built it. This is just someone trying to take it. That's a smaller fear. Her mouth moved, not quite a smile. Cough if the pearls come off the elevator. I need to sleep. I have a company to lose on purpose. Hana came back on the 4th morning with a lawyer who had never eaten at Dongwook's table, exactly as ordered. The lawyer stayed in the corridor. Hana came into room 14 alone, tablet against her chest, and she waited until the nurse finished the blood pressure cuff and left before she said anything at all. I found the hand. Kiana sat up without help. The oxygen line was gone. Her color had come back enough that a stranger would have called her tired, not sick, and she was counting on strangers being wrong about her for a while longer. Sit, Kiana said. Talk low. Hana pulled the plastic chair to the rail. She turned the tablet so only the two of them could see it. On the screen was a chain of boxes, gray corporate names stacked into gray corporate names, and at the bottom of the chain, a signature block. The second silent position, Hana said. The one from the Milan financing. I walked it back through 4 shells. On Cayman, then Singapore, then a management company in Seoul, then a nominee account. She dragged one finger down the chain. The nominee has power to sign for the fund. One human being holds that power. Kiana looked at the name. She said it once, flat, to hear it in her own mouth. Hyun-tae. Seo Hyun-tae. Hana said. His signature, his personal chop, not the family's, his. She let that sit. He's the buyer of record. Every tranche. 14 months, then the ads at 9, 7, 5 weeks. All him. Kiana leaned back into the pillows. She held the tablet a moment longer, then set it face down on the blanket. Outside the window, the afternoon had gone flat and white again, the kind of sky that made the room feel like it had no time in it. He drafted the power of attorney, Kiana said. He bought the shares. He priced the archive. She turned the facts one at a time, the way she used to turn a seam to find the pull. It's a clean line. Every thread ends at the same hand. Too clean, Hana said. Kiana looked at her. That's what I came to say. Hana pushed her glasses up. I've done this for you 7 years. When a thing lines up this neat, someone laid it out neat on purpose. Hyun-tae is a signature. He's not a brain. I sat across from him at your 3rd-year audit. He couldn't hold a lie past the second follow-up question. The door opened. Jun-ho stepped in, closed it behind him without letting the latch click, and stood with his back to it. He had been the wall in the corridor for 4 days now, the same shirt, and the nurses had stopped registering him as a visitor and started registering him as furniture. He liked that. The Pearls left the building an hour ago, he said. Miran took the father home for his medication. Hyun-tae stayed. Where? Kiana said. The family lounge. On the phone. He's been on the phone since noon. Junho's eyes moved to the tablet face down on the blanket. You found something. Hana found his name on everything, Kiana said, and Hana doesn't believe it. Junho was quiet. He came off the door and crossed to the window, and he looked down at the parking structure, the way he looked at everything now, like he was reading a document written in cars. He's a careful man who left his name on 14 months of crime, Junho said. A careful man doesn't do that unless someone told him his name was safe. He turned around. Someone promised him he'd never be the one holding it. Miran, Kiana said. Miran, he said. But you can't take a promise to a room. You can't put my sister's voice on your CFO's screen. He looked at Hana. You have his signature. You don't have hers. Everything you found protects her. She built it to end at him. Hana's jaw set. Then we get hers. How? Kiana said. It wasn't a challenge. It was a real question, asked low, and the 3 of them sat inside it, while the monitor ticked, and the white sky pressed the glass. The answer walked past the door. They heard him before they saw him. Hyun-tae, in the corridor, voice pitched up and thin, the way a man talks when the thing he is holding is heavier than he expected. He passed the narrow window of room 14 without a glance inside. He was looking at his phone. He had a coat over one arm and a slim leather case in the same hand, and he was arguing with someone who could not be argued with. I told you I'd have it before the weekend. I'm at the hospital now. I can't just... A pause. His free hand came up and pressed his own eye. Because she asked me to my face where the shipping margins went. That's why. At the dinner, she knows something's soft. If she pulls the... He stopped walking. He was maybe 6 feet past the door. His voice dropped so low the words fell out of range, and then it climbed again, cracked in the middle. Don't say that to me. Don't. I'm the one who... The rest was gone down the corridor. Kiana was already off the pillows. Jun-ho. He was moving. He opened the door the width of a shoulder and stepped out, unhurried, a man in shirt sleeves going nowhere. Hana half rose and Kiana caught her wrist and held her still. No, one person. He knows your face. He doesn't see his cousin's husband. Nobody sees his cousin's husband. Through the gap in the door, they could see a slice of the corridor. They could see Hyun-tae's back, the coat, the case, the phone at his ear. They could see him turn a slow circle the way a cornered man turns, looking for a wall to put behind him, and they could see him head for the alcove where the linen cart sat. The same alcove, Kiana would think later, where a quiet man had once stood behind a curtain and learned everything. Hyun-tae set the leather case down on top of the linen cart to free his hand. He pressed the phone with both hands now, the way you hold a thing you're begging. His shoulders had come up around his ears. Jun-ho walked past him, not toward him. Past him, down the corridor, a man going to the water station, and he did not slow and he did not look, and he was gone around the corner, before Hyun-tae registered that anyone had been there at all. He's leaving him alone with it, Hana breathed. Why is he? Watch the case, Kiana said. Hyun-tae ended the call. He stood a moment with the phone against his mouth, breathing. Then he snatched the coat up off the cart, and the case came with it, tangled in the fold of the coat, and he was walking fast now, done, finished, getting out, and the case slid. It slid off the crook of his arm and hit the floor and skated under the linen cart on the smooth tile, and Hyun-tae was 3 steps gone before the sound reached him. He stopped. He looked back. He looked at his watch. His phone lit in his hand again, buzzing, the person who could not be argued with calling back, and he made the smallest, most human calculation a frightened man makes. The call now, the case later, it's just under the cart. I'll send someone. And he answered the phone and put it to his ear and walked into the elevator and let the doors take him. The corridor was empty for the length of one breath. Then Jun-ho came back around the far corner, unhurried, and on his way to nowhere he crouched by the linen cart, as if his shoe had come loose. And when he stood, the case was inside his coat. He came through the door of room 14, and the latch did not click. He set it on the blanket, a slim leather case, a zip along 3 sides, scuffed at one corner. Nobody touched it for a second. He'll come back for it, Hana said. He'll send a nurse for it in an hour, Jun-ho said. And the nurses will look where he says a case is, and there won't be one, and he'll decide he lost it in the car. He looked at Kiana. You have an hour, maybe 2. Whatever's in there, it's back on that cart before he sends anyone. In the same place, at the same angle. Or he knows. Kiana unzipped it. Papers, a charger, a folded pair of reading glasses, and in the small inner sleeve, a pen drive, black, no label, warm-looking under the room light, for no reason except that everything in the case suddenly seemed to be arranged around it. Hana already had the tablet in her hands, the adapter out of her bag, before Kiana had lifted the drive free. Hana did this for a living. Hana had come to a hospital with an adapter for every port made, and none of them had asked her why. If it's encrypted, we're done, Hana said, seating it. If it's encrypted, we put it back, and we... It wasn't encrypted. Hyun-tae was a careful man who left his name on everything, and careful men who are also frightened do not encrypt the drive they carry between 2 people who already know their secret. The folder tree opened. Hana turned the tablet flat on the blanket, and the 3 of them bent over it, heads close, and the monitor ticked, and outside the white sky held its breath. Spreadsheets, the shipping books, the real ones, the ones with a second tab, the losses that Miran had waved off the dinner table as a separate conversation. A hole, not a soft margin, a crater. Kiana read the bottom line and felt the number the way you feel a stare that isn't there. That's not a bad year, she said. That's not even 3 bad years. That's someone taking money out of a thing that was already sinking and calling the splash a wave. Scroll, Jun-ho said. Hana scrolled. Loan documents, personal guarantees, and a name on the guarantees that was not the company's name and was not Hyun-tae's name. Seo Miran. There, Jun-ho said, quiet. He put one finger on the screen, not quite touching. She guaranteed the shipping debt personally. 2 years ago, when the bank stopped believing the company, She signed her own name to keep the money coming. He looked at Kiana. The father doesn't know. If the father knew his daughter had pledged her own neck to cover a hole he thinks is a rough patch, he stopped. He didn't finish it. He didn't have to. Keep going, Kiana said. Her voice had changed. It had gone very even, the way it went when the number was bad, and the hands still had to be steady. There was a folder inside a folder. Hana opened it. Voice memos. They were labeled by date. Hyuntae's phone, backed up to the drive, because a careful, frightened man keeps proof that he was only following orders. Keeps it against the day the whole thing falls, and someone has to hold it, and he has decided it will not be him. He had recorded her. He had recorded Miran over months, and saved it where he thought no one would ever have a reason to look, because the reason to look was supposed to be dead in a hospital bed. Hana pressed one. Miran's voice came out of the tablet, tinny and close and unmistakable, the same voice that corrected a vowel across a dinner table. You don't sign anything until she's under. I've told you, the wife is the problem, not the company. Once she's incapacitated the father witnesses, we file, and by the time she's strong enough to read a document, she's reading one she already signed. Hana stopped it. Her thumb was shaking, one small tremor, and she pressed the tablet flat to still it. Nobody said anything. Kiana had gone completely still against the pillows. Not the stillness of shock, the other one. The stillness of a woman doing arithmetic she has done before and did not enjoy the first time. Play the rest, she said. Kiana, play it. I need all of it, not the part that hurts, the part I can use. Hana played it. There was more, and it was worse. And it was not worse in the way the family thought of Kiana, not the vowel, not the hobby, not the sala the dress walked into. It was worse in a colder way. It was a woman who had run a thing into the ground, pledged her own name to hide it, and then found a sick sister-in-law lying between her and the one clean asset left in the family. Miran talked about the timing of the collection launch. Miran talked about pushing it out to soften the price. Miran talked about the father as a hand to be moved. He'll witness whatever I put in front of him. If I tell him it's for the family, he thinks in bloodlines, use the bloodline. And Hyuntae, on the recording, said almost nothing. A man saying yes, in the smallest voice a man has. Kiana listened to her own name go by 3 times. She did not flinch on any of them. When it ended, she looked at the window for a moment. Then she looked at Junho, and something passed between them that had no words in it, 4 years old, and built in the dark of a father's house. It's her, Kiana said. It was always her. He's the hand, she's the arm. She's the arm, and the debt is the reason, Junho said. She's not doing this to put you in your place. That's the story she tells the father. She's doing it because if the shipping hole opens before she can pour your company into it, she loses everything, and her name is on the loans, and the father finds out what she did with the thing he trusts her to run. He said it without heat. He was reading a document again. She's not proud. She's drowning. Proud is the mask. I told you there was a hole. This is the size of it. Hana was already copying. Fingers fast, the professional in her fully awake now, cloning the drive to 2 encrypted stores before anyone had told her to, because she had done this for 7 years, and she knew that the difference between a threat and a weapon was a second copy. 2 mirrors, she said, not looking up. One goes to the outside lawyer in the corridor tonight, sealed, unopened. He holds it, and he never knows what it is. One stays with me, off every network. Her eyes came up. The original goes back in the case, same sleeve, same angle, before he sends the nurse. How long has that copy taken? Kiana said. Hana checked. 90 seconds more. Then we have time to be careful. And no time to be scared, Kiana said. And she almost smiled, and it almost reached her eyes. And it was the first thing that had looked like the woman from the atelier since the ambulance. Junho stood by the door, listening to the corridor. He heard the elevator. He heard it stop on the floor below, not this one, not yet. Say the whole thing back to me, Kiana said to him, low, so I know we're holding the same picture. He did it the way he did everything, in order, nothing wasted. The shipping's been dying for years. Miran hid it from the father and pledged her own name to keep it breathing. 2 years ago, the bank stopped, and she signed the guarantees. The hole kept growing. She needed a clean asset to pour into it before it opened. Yours was the cleanest thing in reach, and you married in, and the father already believed you didn't belong. He paused. So she built a way to take it. Hyuntae the buyer, Hyuntae the drafter, Hyuntae's name on all of it. So if it fell on him. The power of attorney, the timing, the father as the witness who thinks he's protecting the family. She waited for a window. She didn't make you sick, but when you got sick, she called it a gift and moved. And the recordings, Kiana said. He kept them to save himself. She doesn't know they exist. Junho's mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Colder than a smile. That's the whole turn. She thinks she's the only one holding the knife. Her own hand has been recording her for months and carrying it around in a bag. Kiana closed her eyes for 1 second. When she opened them, she was somewhere else. Already 3 moves ahead, in a room that hadn't happened yet, with a folder on a table and a father who thought in bloodlines. Change of plan, she said. Not the plan, the size of it. Say it, Junho said. I was going to defend, move my things out, let them sign a power over an empty box, buy the soft edge of their debt, sit quiet, wait. Her hands lay flat on the blanket now, steady, a seamstress's hands. That's still true, but I was going to buy a slice. The soft slice. Enough to have leverage and stay hidden. She looked at the tablet, at the folder tree, at the guarantee with Miran's name on it. I'm not buying a slice anymore. Hana looked up. How much are you buying? All of it, Kiana said. Every loan with her name on the guarantee, the banks, the fund, the soft lender, all of it, through the Milan box and the France box, no 2 pieces knowing they belong to the same hand. I want to own the rope she's climbing and the ground she'd land on. She said it without raising her voice at all. She spent 2 years betting the family name that no one would ever add these numbers. I'm going to be the one who added them, and I'm going to be holding the paper when she reaches for mine. That's more money than the slice, Hana said, carefully. A CFO's carefully. I have it in the boxes. I've been putting it there for years and calling it something boring. Kiana looked at her. You always asked me why I kept so much dry. This is why. I didn't know it would be her. I knew it would be someone. The monitor ticked. Down the hall, a phone rang at the nurse's station, and a nurse answered it and said, "Room?" And there was a pause, and Junho came off the wall. That's him, he said. That's the nurse he's sending. Hana ripped the drive out. 90 seconds had been 80. She had the original back in the inner sleeve, and the zip closed before Kiana had lifted her hand, and she pressed it into Junho's coat, and he was through the door with it, while the nurse at the station was still saying, "Under the linen cart, all right, I'll look." Through the gap in the door, they watched him do it. A man in shirt sleeves, going to the water station, and on the way his shoe came loose again by the linen alcove, and when he straightened, the case was on the floor half under the cart, at an angle, scuffed corner out, the way a dropped thing lands. The nurse came around the corner 30 seconds later, looked where she'd been told and picked it up, and carried it to the desk, and put it in a bag with a room number that wasn't 14. Kiana let out a breath she had been holding so evenly that Hana hadn't seen it was held. Okay, Kiana said, to the ceiling. Okay. Jun-ho came back in. He didn't sit. He stood at the foot of the bed with his hands in his pockets and looked at his wife. And for the first time in 4 days, the wall came down off his face for a second. And what was under it was not soft, exactly. It was recognition. It was a man who had married a woman because she was the only person he'd ever met who could hear the worst thing in a room and get quieter instead of louder. "You're getting better faster than I told them you would," he said. "Much faster," Kiana said. "The fever broke the first morning. I've been sitting up since yesterday. I could walk the corridor tonight if I wanted them to see it." She looked at him. "They don't get to see it." "No," he said. "They get the girl in the pink robe. They get the one who's too weak to read a document. They get exactly the picture they built, right up until it's the wrong picture." She turned to Hana. "Nobody at the office hears that I'm strong. The family hears the scary half of the prognosis and nothing else. When they come with the paper, they come to a sick woman. That's the whole trick. Let them be right about me one more time." Hana closed the tablet. She sat back in the plastic chair and took her glasses off and pressed the bridge of her nose, and when she put them back on, her eyes were wet at the edges, and her voice was flat and even, the two things at once. 7 years, she said. I always thought the worst of them was the small stuff. The vowel, the empty bowl, the hobby. She shook her head. Once. I didn't think it was money. I didn't think it was this much money. The small stuff was the mask, Kiana said gently. You heard her. Use the bloodline. She let the father hate me for the shape of my life, because his hate did the work she needed and cost her nothing. She didn't build the wall. She just leaned on it and pointed. Jun-ho moved to the window one more time and looked down. The parking structure. The white sky. Somewhere below, a careful, frightened man was getting into a car with a case he thought held his only insurance, not knowing that his insurance had been copied twice in 90 seconds and that the thing he'd recorded to save himself was now the thing that would end the woman he'd recorded it against. There's a piece you should know, he said, still facing the glass. About him. Say it, Kiana said. He kept those recordings to protect himself from her. That means he's already decided, somewhere he won't admit yet, that this ends with her falling and him needing a reason he was only the hand. Jun-ho turned. A man like that doesn't fight when the floor tilts. He looks for the side that's standing. When the time comes, he's not the enemy. He's the first one who'll want to cooperate. Remember that, when you're deciding who loses everything and who gets to walk. Kiana looked at him a long moment. You've already decided something too, she said. About the dinner. About the father. I've decided I'm going to say some things out loud that I learned in the dark, Jun-ho said. In his house. At his table. Word for word. He said it the way he said everything, without weight, and it landed heavier for it. But not yet. Not until you've bought the rope. Not until the paper's signed and they're sure they've won. You don't show a man the whole picture until his own hands have finished framing it. Hana stood. She gathered the tablet, the adapters, the bag. At the door she stopped. The lawyer in the corridor, she said. What do I tell him it is? A sealed envelope you're asking him to hold, Kiana said. That's all. He holds it. He doesn't open it. He bills me for the holding. If anything happens to me or to you, he opens it, and he knows exactly who to give it to. She paused. Pick the giving to when you get home. Write it down, then burn the note. Hana almost laughed. It came out shaped like something else. You've thought about this. I've thought about being a woman with more money than protection since I was 20, Kiana said. This is just the first time the wolf had a name. Hana left. The lawyer's shoes went down the corridor with hers, and the elevator took them, and the floor went quiet the way hospital floors go quiet in the afternoon. Kiana lay back. The white sky had started, finally, to go gray at one edge. She put her hand out along the blanket, and Junho crossed the room and took it, and neither of them said the thing they were both holding, which was that they had just crossed a line with no way back on the other side of it. "You know what she said on the last one," Kiana said, before Hana stopped it. "I heard. She thinks the tone of a word makes her one of us." Kiana repeated it without heat, the way you repeat a measurement. 4 years I bent my mouth around their language so a room would let me sit in it. She filed that under my weakness. Her thumb moved once across the back of his hand. "She has no idea I stopped bending anything the day I married you." "When it's done," Junho said, "we don't live in that house's shadow anymore. Different address. Far one." "Far one," she agreed. The monitor ticked. 2 floors up, a woman the whole family had already buried lay very still and let them, and closed her eyes, and did not sleep. And behind the closed eyes, she was already at a table that hadn't been set yet, watching a man she loved recite the dark back to his father, word for word, while she opened a folder no one at that table knew existed. "Cough if the pearls come off the elevator," she murmured, an old joke now, hours old, the only joke they had. "The pearls went home," Junho said. "It's just us." "Good," Kiana said. "Then let me rest. I have a great deal of money to spend very quietly, and I'd like to be strong enough to enjoy it and weak enough that they don't notice." She almost smiled. "A narrow window. I intend to live in it." The clock on the wall of room 14 read 3 minutes past 3 when the door opened without a knock. Kiana was awake. She had trained herself to be awake at this hour across 4 nights, lying flat under the thin blanket with her eyes half closed, breathing the slow breath of someone the machines had beaten down. She heard the handle turn. She heard the soft slide of an expensive sole on hospital tile. She kept her breath long. Miran came in first. Behind her, the slower drag of a cane, the catch of a heavier step. Dong-wook. And behind them both, last through the door, in shirt sleeves, a man who had not left this floor in 4 days. Junho. Kiana let her eyes open the way a sick woman's eyes open, late, reluctant, one at a time. She let the room swim into her face. She had rehearsed this. She had told him she would do this. But knowing a thing is coming and feeling the floor tilt anyway are 2 different animals, and when she saw her husband standing behind his sister at 3 in the morning with a leather folder under his arm, something in her chest went cold in a way she had not planned. "You're awake," Miran said. "Good. We don't want to tire you." She set her structured bag on the foot of the bed. She did it gently, the way you set flowers. Then she pulled the visitor's chair closer, its legs shrieking once against the tile, and sat where the light from the corridor cut across her. "Abionim wanted to see you," she said. "He couldn't sleep, neither could you, it seems. So," Dong-wook lowered himself into the second chair. His jade ring caught the low light. He held his cane between his knees with both hands and looked at Kiana with the tired eyes of a man performing sorrow he did not feel. "Daughter," he said. He had never called her that. 4 years, and never once that word. Kiana held it in her mouth like a stone and said nothing. "You've been very sick," Miran went on. "We were frightened, all of us. Junho, most of all. He hasn't slept. Look at him. Look at your husband." Kiana looked. Junho stood by the wall where the curtain track ended, folder under his arm, face like poured concrete. He met her eyes for exactly as long as a stranger would. Then he looked at the monitor instead, the way a man looks at a thing he cannot help. "Don't move your face," he had told her, and here he was, not moving his. "He signs papers all day for this family," Miran said. "He never complains. He does what's needed." She reached into the bag, And now there are papers for you. The folder in her hand was not the one under Junho's arm. This one was slim, cream-colored, tied with a flat cotton ribbon. She untied it with 2 fingers. She laid a single document face up on the blanket over Kiana's legs, and beside it, a pen. A good pen, black, heavy, uncapped. "It's nothing," Miran said. "It's protection, for you." Kiana looked down at the page without lifting her head. She did not read it. She knew what it said. She had known for 4 days. Durable power of attorney. Full grant over the businesses, the holdings, the accounts. Her signature at the bottom, a witness line beneath it. "I don't understand these things," Kiana said. She made her voice small. She made her voice small. She made her voice small. "You don't have to," Miran said. "That's the point. You've been carrying too much. The doctors say stress feeds the infection." "Do you want to go back on the machine?" She let that sit. "Of course not. So we take the weight off you. Someone the family trusts holds the papers while you rest. That's all." "Who holds them?" Miran smiled. "Family." Dongwook shifted his cane. "It is proper," he said. "A wife who is ill lets the house carry her. This is not shame. This is order." Kiana turned her face toward the window. The city was black glass and a few far lights. She let herself look weak toward it. Inside, she was counting. She was counting the pieces already moved. The real assets, the archive, the licensing, the founder's stock, the pool for the staff, the structure Junho had built outside the Seo name, all of it gone from where this paper reached. What this paper reached now was a box with nothing in it, a holding with a name and no floor. She had signed her whole company out from under this pen days before the pen arrived. She knew that. She had built that. And still, when she turned back and saw the witness line waiting for Dongwook's hand, the old wound opened anyway, because that was the thing about a wound. It didn't care what you knew. A nurse's shoes passed in the corridor and faded. Miran waited for the sound to go. She had chosen the hour for its emptiness, the shift change, the thin staffing, the long minutes when a call button rang into a station where no one sat. Kiana understood the arithmetic of it. Fear, alone, at 3, with a gentle face and a pen. It had been designed to break a strong woman, by making her prove she wasn't afraid. It was, Kiana thought, a very good plan for the wrong person. "Read it to me," Kiana said. Miran's smile thinned. "It's long." "Then the important part." "The important part," Miran said, "is that you sign it, and you get to be sick in peace, and none of us has to watch you kill yourself over a dress company while your husband sits in a plastic chair for a week." She leaned in. The pearls swung once. "And you want to know what's proper, Kiana? Proper is a woman who knows the difference between a marriage and a merger. You married my brother. You did not marry the family. There is a wall, and you have spent 4 years pretending you don't see it, and everyone at that table has been too polite to walk you into it." "Miran," Dongwook said, not a stop, a permission dressed as a caution. "No, let her hear it. She's a grown woman." Miran's voice stayed level, almost kind, which was worse. "You are not a Seo. You wear the name at parties. You bow the way you were taught. But blood is blood, and you don't have ours. And when the body fails, and yours failed, in an atelier, alone, on a floor, the family closes over the gap. That is what a family is. You built a brand. We are building 100 years. Sign the paper and let the people who know how to carry this, carry it." The words landed exactly where they had landed at the dinner table months ago, in the same place, on the same bone. "Dinheiro novo compra o vestido, não a sala." Kiana felt her jaw want to set and made it stay soft. She let her eyes go wet at the edges, which was not entirely acting, and she hated that it was not entirely acting. "You practiced that," Kiana said quietly. Miran tilted her head. "Practiced what?" "The speech. You've said it before. To a mirror, maybe." "It's very smooth." Kiana let her voice thin out again before it could sharpen. "It's a beautiful speech." "It's the truth." Miran didn't blink. "The truth is always smooth by the time it matters." She folded her hands. Abionim shouldn't have to sit in a hospital at his age. Junho shouldn't have to choose between his wife and his name. You can end all of it. One line. You give the weight to the family and you close your eyes and you get better. And in a year, none of this will have happened. That's the gift I'm handing you. People wait their whole lives for someone to take the weight and never get it. Dongwook said nothing. He watched his daughter-in-law with the patience of a man who had buried a wife and outlived his own softness. The empty chair, Kiana thought. He set a bowl for 30 years. He knows exactly how to wait a woman out. "Junho," Kiana said. He looked at her. "You've read this?" A beat, one beat, and in that beat the floor tilted all the way because he did not answer fast, and a man who loved you answered fast. The monitor ticked, the corridor hummed. She looked at her husband's flat stranger's face, and for one full second, 1 second she would never tell him about. She did not know. She did not know if the 4 days in the chair had been vigil or theater. She did not know if the folder under his arm was her sword or her sentence. She did not know if the man she had built a life beside had spent that life measuring the moment to hand her to his sister. 1 second, the lowest floor of it. Then Junho said, "I've read it. And? It's what the family thinks is best." His voice gave her nothing. "I won't fight you on it." Miran's face eased into something soft and awful. She turned to Dongwook. "You see, he's tired. He wants his wife to rest. He's not going to stand between her and the family over a signature." She looked back at Kiana. "He already agreed, days ago. Ask him. He gave his word to Abionim before you woke up." That was the knife, not the paper. The claim that he had gone first, gone behind her, gone quiet in a corridor, and traded her away while she was under. Miran had built the whole moment on it. "Orgulo asina mais rapido que medo." She'd said it herself in a lounge she thought was empty. She meant to make Kiana sign, to prove she was too strong to be robbed. She had built the box. She just had the wrong woman in it. Because Kiana had heard that too. Junho had brought her every word. So Kiana let the second end. She let the floor come back up under her. She turned her face to the pillow, and she let out a breath that shook. A real breath. She had plenty of real ones. And when she spoke, she gave Miran exactly the voice Miran had come to collect. "He agreed," Kiana said, small, broken at the edge. "Of course he did." "Kiana," Junho started, on cue, 1 step off the wall. "No." She lifted a hand off the blanket, and it trembled, and she let it. "No, it's fine. She's right. I'm tired. I'm so tired." She looked at the paper. She looked at the pen. "I don't want the machine again." "Nobody wants that," Miran said gently, and slid the pen 1/2 inch closer. Dongwook leaned his cane against the bed and drew his chair to the witness line. He uncapped nothing. His was already a fountain pen, old, gold-nibbed, the kind of pen that had signed away better things than this. He set it to the page below her line and waited, patient as a wall, for her to go first. Kiana picked up the pen. Her hand shook. She let it shake. She was strong enough now to hold a needle steady. She'd proven that to herself in an atelier at 2 a.m. a lifetime ago, the last test she trusted, but she made the pen wander over the line like a weak thing, like a woman signing under a fog of antibiotics and fear. She let a tear fall and hit the page, and she watched Miran watch it, watched the small satisfaction move behind her sister-in-law's eyes, the satisfaction of a person who mistook a performance for a victory. "You don't have to," Junho said, from the wall. He said it the way the plan required. Soft, defeated, a husband going through emotion. But his eyes, when they found hers over Miran's bent head, were not soft. They were steady. They were the eyes of a man holding a folder full of a woman's own voice, waiting for the room to hand him the moment. Kiana signed. She wrote her name the way she wrote it on couture invoices, on 11 years of them, on the founding papers of a company that no longer lived inside the reach of this page. Kiana Noel. Full, round, sure. And then she smeared the tail of it, on purpose, so it looked like the signature of someone whose hand had given out. She set the pen down. She let her head fall back to the pillow. Dongwook signed beneath her. His nib scratched once, twice. He capped the pen. He looked, for a moment, almost gentle. The gentleness of a man who believes he has just restored order to his house and does not know he has signed his name to an empty room. "There," Miran said. She lifted the page by its corner, blew once across the wet ink the way you'd blow across tea, and slid it back into the cream folder. She tied the ribbon. She stood. "That wasn't so hard." "No," Kiana whispered. "It wasn't." Miran gathered her bag. She was already somewhere else, already in tomorrow, in the calls she would make, the escrow she would freeze, the launch she would announce a compassionate postponement for. She had come into a hospital room at 3 in the morning to take a company, and she believed she was walking out with one under her arm. "Rest," she said, without looking back. "Get well. The family will handle everything now." She stopped at the door. She turned. She looked at Kiana one last time, propped and pale and small in the pink robe with the thin chain at her throat, and something crossed her face that was almost tenderness and was really only triumph wearing tenderness for the night. "You did the right thing," Miran said. "Some women fight. It's exhausting to watch. You have grace. I'll give you that." She adjusted the bag on her shoulder. "It's a shame it took nearly dying to teach it to you." Then she was gone, the cane and the old man following, the slow drag of Dongwook's step fading down the corridor toward the elevators. The door swung shut. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Junho stood at the wall. Kiana lay in the bed. The monitor kept its small, honest rhythm, the only thing in the room that hadn't lied all night. Then Kiana opened her eyes fully, and there was nothing weak in them at all. "Close it," she said. Junho crossed to the door and set the latch. Quiet, so the click didn't carry. He came back to the bed. He set the leather folder down on the blanket where the cream one had been, and he stood over her. And for the first time in 4 days, something in his jaw came loose. "You went cold," he said. "When I didn't answer fast enough, I saw it." "You saw nothing." Miran was watching. "I saw it, Kiana." She was quiet. Then, 1 second. "I gave you 1 second." She reached up and pressed her palm flat to his chest, over the shirt he'd worn since Tuesday, and felt his heart going faster than his face would ever admit. That's what she does. She doesn't steal the money. She steals the second where you don't know if you're alone. "I knew you didn't sell me." I knew it in my head the whole time. Her hand curled into the fabric. But she found the one part of me that didn't get the message, and for 1 second she had it. And then I signed her a box," Kiana said, and she carried it out like it was full. Junho let out a breath that was almost a laugh and had no laughter in it. He sat on the edge of the bed. He took her signing hand, the one that had trembled to order, and turned it over, and pressed his thumb to her steady pulse. "She thinks she won tonight," he said. "She has to. That's the whole point. She has to walk to the launch, freeze the pre-sales, call the postponement, tell your father it's handled. Kiana's eyes moved to the folder between them, dark leather, the thing that had ridden under his arm through the entire performance like a loaded gun no one in the room had looked at twice. Let her spend every coin she thinks she has. Let her stand in that house and believe she owns me. She's going to say all of it out loud. She's going to say it at your father's table, where she said the first of it, in front of the empty chair. And I'll say it back, Junho said. Word for word. Word for word. He was silent a moment. Then, low, you cried on the page. That wasn't the plan. It was the best part of the plan, Kiana said. She needed a tear. A woman who doesn't cry is a woman who has something else. I gave her the one thing that made the rest of it invisible. She closed her eyes. It cost me nothing. I've cried at that table before for free. Junho looked down at her hand in his. Outside, far off, the elevator chimed and swallowed his father and his sister and the empty folder they thought was heavy. He thought about the 4 days he'd spent as furniture in a hallway, learning every word, holding every one like type in a press, and he thought that his sister had walked past him 100 times this week and never once seen a man, only a chair, only the quiet one. He was going to let her keep thinking that until the exact instant it broke her. How long, he said, before she moves the money she thinks she can move? Tomorrow. She won't wait. She never waits. That's the debt talking. A person who isn't drowning can afford to be patient. Kiana opened her eyes. By the time she reaches for the accounts, there's nothing under the name but the box. And by the time she understands that, Hana will have closed on the last tranche of her debt. Every guarantee she signed 2 years ago. Every one in my hand. Kiana was quiet a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had dropped the last of the performance. She called it a gift, she said. Taking the weight, she stood there and told me people wait their whole lives for someone to carry them. A breath. Do you know the cruel part? For one heartbeat I wanted it, not the theft, the rest. I've been tired for 11 years, Junho. I finished a collection on the floor of an atelier, with a fever I wouldn't measure, because measuring it meant stopping. And your sister walked in and offered to make the tiredness go away, and some animal part of me leaned toward her hand before my head caught it. She looked at the ceiling. That's the trick underneath the trick. She doesn't offer to rob you. She offers to let you rest. That's what gets women to sign. But you didn't lean. I leaned, Kiana said, for a heartbeat. Then I remembered I already put myself somewhere she can't reach, and the tiredness could wait 1 more week. Her mouth curved, thin. It can always wait 1 more week. That's the whole disease and the whole cure. Junho turned from the window. You'll own her. I'll own the rope she's climbing, Kiana said. There's a difference. Owning her would be revenge. Owning the rope is just where she happens to be standing when I decide whether to hold it or let go. Junho was quiet. Then he stood, and he crossed to the window, and he looked out at the black city where his family thought the night had gone their way. My father called you daughter, he said. I heard. He's never said it. Not once. Not at the wedding. Not when we told him we wanted a child. His voice stayed flat, but his hand tightened around hers. Tonight he says it because his daughter told him to, because it costs nothing, and it opens a hand. That's what the word was worth to him, a tool to pass a pen with. I know what it was worth. Does it still land? He asked. After everything, does it still get in? Kiana considered lying to him, and didn't. Yes, she said. It gets in. That's the thing she counted on, and you didn't. My head has been ready for a week. My chest hasn't. She pressed his hand flat between both of hers. You want to know the number that matters? Not the debt, not the tranches. 1 second. She found 1 second where I forgot I wasn't alone, and she found 1 place a word could still cut. That's all she needed, and that's all she got. and it wasn't enough, and it's still going to ache in the morning. A pause. Let it. I'd rather ache than be the woman who feels nothing at that table. Feeling nothing is her. 4 years. I heard that too. Kiana pulled the blanket higher. The performance was over, and her body, which had genuinely nearly died in an atelier a week ago, reminded her of it now that it was allowed to. He'll call me worse before he calls me daughter, and means it, if he ever does. She watched her husband's back at the glass, the line of his shoulders, the tattoo just under his collar that his father's family had never asked the meaning of. You should go home tonight. Sleep in a bed. She needs to see you tired and beaten and glad it's over. A man who won doesn't sleep in a chair. He turned. I've slept in worse than a chair. That's not the point, and you know it. He came back to the bed. He picked up the leather folder and held it a moment, weighing it. This thing that would sit closed on a dinner table 3 days from now, and undo everything the cream folder pretended to build. Then he set it inside his coat, against his chest, where it had ridden all week. When you signed, he said, your hand shook exactly right. I almost believed it, and I built the plan with you. Good, Kiana said. Then it'll do. He bent and put his mouth to her forehead, over the fever that had broken days ago, and left her stronger than any of them knew, and he stayed there a breath longer than a man in a hurry would. Rest, he said, echoing his sister without meaning to, meaning the opposite. You've got a great deal of money to spend very quietly. And a launch to save, Kiana murmured, already half under, that they think they've buried. He let himself out without a sound. The latch clicked. The corridor took him. Kiana lay alone in room 14, with the machine keeping its honest count. The pink robe pale in the dark. The smear of her own name, drying inside a folder her enemy carried home like a trophy. She thought of the page. She thought of the box behind it. Clean and empty and legal, waiting. She thought of a table in a house on the hill, an empty chair set for a dead woman, and a sister-in-law who had just told her, 1 hour before losing everything, that some women fight and it is exhausting to watch. She let herself smile then, only then, alone, with no one to perform it for. She had not fought, not once, not at the table, not in the corridor, not with the pen. She had let them correct her Korean and call her new money and stand over her sickbed at 3 in the morning, and she had bowed, and she had wept, and she had signed. And she had moved a 100-year house 4 days before they walked into the room, and none of them had heard the furniture drag. Down the hall, the elevator doors closed on Miran's straight back, and Dongwook's bent one, and the slim cream folder tucked under a structured arm. Miran was already dialing. She had no idea she was calling from inside the box. 9 days later, the long table in the Seo house was set the way it was always set, and Kiana walked into it wearing lilac. She came through the courtyard on her own feet, no arm to lean on, a leather folder held flat against her hip. The pencil dress moved with her. The heels touched the stone without a sound she cared about. Jun-ho was half a step behind, in the charcoal suit, the way he entered every room in this house. But tonight he walked with her, not ahead of her, and the guard at the gate noticed it before anyone inside did. Dongwook sat at the head, gray hanbok, jade ring, the cane hooked on the chair. Miran sat at his right in wine-dark silk and the big pearls, a phone face down beside her plate. Hyuntae had the seat past her, thinner than 9 days ago, the fine silver glasses catching the light every time he looked up, which was often. The empty chair for the dead mother held its empty bowl at the far end. You look well, Miran said. It landed like an accusation. I feel well, Kiana said, and sat. Miran's eyes went to the folder as Kiana set it beside her plate. She let them. That was part of it. The soup came, nobody touched it. We should talk about the company, Miran said. She had rehearsed the gentleness. Now that you're stronger, there are things that were decided while you were unwell. For your protection, I'll walk you through them when you're rested. You already walked me through them, Kiana said. At 3 in the morning, in room 14. A small silence. Dongwook's spoon stopped above the bowl. You signed willingly, Miran said. I did, Kiana said. I want to be clear about that. Nobody forced my hand. She turned the pearl of the piercing on her nose. A small habit, then stopped. I signed exactly what you brought me. Miran picked her spoon back up. She thought she had won the sentence. Then Junho spoke, and he spoke in Korean, and his voice was flat and even, and not his own. You don't ask for the signature until she is weak enough to be grateful for it. Miran's spoon went back down. 3 in the morning is best. Fever, fear, no nurse, a kind face and a pen. Junho's eyes stayed on the table, on nothing, the way a man recites a thing he has carried too long to look at. Pride signs faster than fear. Let her prove she is well enough to hold the pen. Junho, Dongwook's voice, low. Junho kept going. He does what the family needs. He has never once chosen a woman over the name. He will simply agree. You don't argue with a document, little brother. The color left Miran's face in one clean sweep. You weren't there, she said. I was behind the curtain, Junho said, in English now, so his father would not have the mercy of a language his wife struggled in. The whole time, the linen cart. I heard every word the three of you built. I let you build it. Hyun-tae had gone very still, both hands flat on the cloth. Abionim, Kiana said, turning to Dongwook. You signed as a witness. Do you know what you witnessed? The old man's jaw worked. A power of attorney. For the businesses, the holdings. For a holding, Kiana said. 1. It's called Noel Maison Holdings 2. Miran can confirm. She tried to move money through it yesterday morning. She let that sit. It's a box, Abionim. There's nothing in it. There hasn't been anything in it for 11 days. Miran's hand found the edge of the table. That's not possible, she said. The transfers reached an empty account, Kiana said. Everything real left before your father signed his name. The brand, the archive, the licensing, the pre-sales, she said it without heat, the way you read a receipt. They're held now in a structure that has no CO on it anywhere. My lawyers built it while I was in Paris choosing silk, 9 weeks ago, months before I got sick. Paris, Dongwook repeated. I restructured everything a long time before any of this, Kiana said. The company, my will, the shares, all of it moved toward a foundation, toward executives I trust, toward a structure for children Junho and I have not had yet. Her voice did not break on the word. She had practiced not breaking on it. I did that because I built something, and I wanted it to survive me, not because I saw you coming. I didn't need to see you coming. I'd already put it out of reach. She looked at Miran then, for the first time full on. The paper you carried out of that hospital in the cream folder was a signature on nothing. You blew the ink dry on a page that owns air. Miran was not breathing well. Kiana watched her not breathe. You made a mistake in the math, Kiana went on, quieter. You valued my company at what it was worth to steal. You never once valued what it was worth to me. So you moved slow and clean, and you thought slow and clean was smart. It gave me 14 months. 14, Hyun-tae said, almost to himself, and then shut his mouth. Yes, Kiana said. The first tranche was 14 months ago. Through Cayman, Singapore, a management company in Seoul, a nominee account, 4 shells. She looked at Hyun-tae. Your chop is on all of them. You were the buyer of record. You knew that. Hyun-tae's throat moved. I know you knew, Kiana said, gentler with him than she had been with the others. Because you recorded the person who promised you it was safe. The room changed temperature. What is she talking about? Dong-wook said. Not to Kiana, to his son, to the table. What recordings? Nobody answered him for a moment. Then Kiana reached for the folder and did not open it, and moved it 2 inches toward the center of the table and left her hand on it. There's a second thing you should hear before we talk about what happens next, she said. Because so far, I've only told you what I protected. I haven't told you what I bought. Miran's head came up. The shipping, Kiana said. That's not yours, Miran said. Fast, too fast. The shipping is a family. The shipping has been bleeding for years, Kiana said. Not one bad year. Years. Someone kept pulling money out of a thing that was already going under. She turned the folder a degree, squaring it. 2 years ago, the banks stopped believing in it. So someone signed personal guarantees to keep the loans alive. A name went on the debt. A real name, a human one. Not a company. Dong-wook looked at his daughter. He looked at her the way a man looks at a road he has driven 1,000 times, and only now sees the drop at the edge. Whose name? He said. Miran said nothing. Whose name? Miran said nothing. Mine, she said. The word came out of her like something pulled. The old man set his spoon down with great care, as though the sound of it might break something further. You mortgaged yourself, Kiana said, against a hole you dug, and you hid the hole from your own father, and when the guarantees came due, you needed a clean asset to swallow, so the numbers would sit still. Mine was the cleanest asset in reach. That's what this was. It was never tradition. It was never blood. It was a balance sheet with a wound in it, and you tried to close the wound with my company. You don't understand what it takes to hold something like this together, Miran started. I hold something together, Kiana said. I've held it 11 years. I held it with a fever of 104, finishing a seam at 2 in the morning. Don't tell me what it takes. Miran's mouth closed. Here's what I did with your debt, Kiana said. I bought it. All of it. The bank piece, the fund piece, the soft lender who stopped believing first. I bought it through Milan and through France. 2 hands that never told each other they were the same hand. The last tranche closed yesterday, while you were trying to move money out of an empty box. She finally opened the folder. She turned it so the top page faced the head of the table. I'm your creditor, Miran. Every one you owe to me now. She slid a second page across. And these are the recordings Hyun-tae made to protect himself. Your voice. 2 years of it. You don't sign anything until she's incapacitated. The wife is the problem, not the company. He witnesses whatever I put in front of him if I say it's for the family. He thinks in bloodline. Use the bloodline. Dong-wook flinched at the last one, as if struck. Hana Bell came in from the courtyard door then, on the cue they had set, tablet in one hand, and she set a thick sealed folder on the table beside Kiana's, squared it, and stepped back without a word. The amber glasses caught the light. She did not sit. She was not there to sit. That's the full file, Kiana said. Bank statements, the real books, the second set, the ones that never reached your father, the guarantees, the transcripts. A sealed copy sits with a lawyer who has never eaten at this table, and it opens on its own if anything happens to me or to Hana. So no one at this table needs to have any ideas. The soup had gone cold in every bowl. Miran was the first to move. She reached for the phone beside her plate. Call whoever you want, Kiana said. There's no one to call. The bank's already sold. The fund already sold. You'll be calling your own creditor to complain about your creditor. The hand stopped over the phone. It did not pick it up. Dong-wook spoke into the quiet, and his voice had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. What do you want? It was the question Kiana had waited 4 years and 1 near death to be asked in this house. I want to be precise, she said, because I'm not doing what she did. I'm not going to take everything because I can. She turned pages in Hannah's folder, not reading them, letting the room see there were many. The shipping company has 2 parts. One part is real. It has ships that sail, and crews that get paid, and families behind those crews. The other part is the part Miran built to hide the losses. Paper routes, paper cargo, money going out to nothing. She closed the folder. I'll separate them. The real operations keep running. The people keep their jobs. That's not negotiable, and it's not generosity. It's just that they didn't do this. She did. The dead part gets sold off to cover what's owed. To me, there'll be an audit. A real one, by people who've never sat here. And her, Dong-wook said. He did not look at his daughter when he said it. Miran steps away from everything, Kiana said. The shipping, the family holdings, any signature on anything that touches money. She keeps what's hers personally, minus what she owes me, which is most of it. She doesn't go to prison. I'm not interested in a trial. A trial is loud and I'm done being talked about. But she doesn't hold power in this family again. That's the price. You can't remove me, Miran said. He won't. My father won't put she caught the word before it fully left, won't put an outsider's judgment over his own blood. Dong-wook was quiet for a long moment. Show me the guarantees, he said. Kiana slid the page to him. He read it. His finger stopped on the signature. He knew his daughter's hand. He read the date, 2 years old, and his shoulders came down, and something in his face that had been rigid for 40 years simply gave way. You hid this from me, he said. You let me sit at the head of a table and think I was still the head of it. I was protecting you, Miran said. You were protecting yourself, Dong-wook said, and you spent my name to do it, and you asked me to sign a paper to rob the one person at this table who never lied to me. He put the page down. She corrected your Korean, he said, meaning Kiana, meaning himself as much as his daughter, and you and I told her she would spend her life knocking on the door, and she owned the house the whole time. Abionim, Miran started. Enough, the old man said, and for once, the word was not aimed at Kiana. He turned to Hyuntae. You recorded her. Hyuntae took his glasses off, which was the most naked thing he had done in years. I recorded her because I knew this would land on me, he said. The chop is mine. The shells are mine. When it fell apart, I was going to be the one holding it. I wanted proof of whose idea it was. He looked at Kiana. I'll cooperate, fully. The audit, the accounts, everything I signed and why. I'll put it on paper. Tonight if you want. Tomorrow, Kiana said, with a lawyer in the room. Yours, not ours. He nodded, and something eased in him, the thing Junho had predicted days ago in a hospital room. The man built to be the fall guy, turning the second the floor tilted. Miran stood up. None of you understand what I saved this family from, she said. Her voice had climbed, for years, while you sat here, to her father, and while you played dress-up with Silk, to Kiana. I kept the lights on. I made the choices no one else would make. You made the choices no one else would make because no one else would make them, Kiana said. That's not the same as having to. I refuse, Miran said. Your terms. I refuse. Take me to court. Let's be loud. Let's see whose name survives it. Kiana looked at her a long moment. Okay, she said. That was all. One word. And Miran understood, too late, that the offer had been the mercy, and refusing it was the fall, that a court meant the guarantees and the recordings and the second set of books in front of a judge, that loud was the one thing she could not survive, that Kiana had known she would refuse and had let her refuse anyway, because a thing you choose is heavier than a thing that's done to you. Sit down, Miran, her father said quietly. You've done enough standing tonight. She did not sit. She picked up her bag, the structured black one, and she left the way she had entered every room in this house for 42 years. Spine straight, chin up, and it fooled no one now, and the front door closed on her, the way an elevator had closed on her 9 days before, and she still had no idea she was walking out of a box she'd built with her own hands. The table was quieter after she was gone. Dongwook looked at his son across the length of it, past the empty chair with its empty bowl. I only ever spoke to you to give you a task, he said. In 38 years, I know that. Your mother knew it before I did. His eyes went to the empty place setting, then back. I told myself it was strength. It was fear. I was afraid of a son I couldn't move like a piece on a board. He pressed the jade ring with his thumb, an old habit, then made himself stop. And when you married her, I was afraid of that too. So I made her small. Both of you. I called it tradition because pride sounds better with a good name on it. Junho said nothing. He had learned his silence from this man. I'm not asking you to forgive it tonight, Dongwook said. I'm too old to ask for things quickly. But I am telling you I was wrong, and I would like to say it while I still have a table to say it at. He turned to Kiana, and he bowed his head, not the shallow nod of a host, but a real one, slow, the kind he had spent 4 years making her earn and never once given back. Daughter, he said, and this time there was no pen in the room, nothing to sign, no reason to say it except that he meant it. I'm sorry. Kiana held very still. She had waited 4 years for the word, and it had come, 10 days ago, as a weapon at 3 in the morning, and it had cut. Now it came again with nothing behind it, no paper, no ask, and she found it did not fix anything and did not need to. Some words are late. Late is still a kind of arriving. Thank you, Abionim, she said, and she said it in Korean, and the vowel was perfect, and no one at the table corrected it. Junho reached under the table and found her hand and opened his around it, the only argument he had ever been able to make in his father's house, and he made it now with his father watching, and did not let go. We're leaving the city, Junho told him. Kiana and I, a new house, far from all of this. That's not a punishment. It's just where we want to raise the family we haven't started yet. He looked at his father steadily. You can visit, when you're invited. I would like to be invited, the old man said. Then earn it, Junho said, and it was the first thing he had ever said to his father that was not obedience and was not war, and Dongwook took it and nodded because it was fair. They did not stay for the rest of the meal. There was no rest of the meal. Hana gathered the folders. Hyuntae walked them to the courtyard and said, at the door, quietly, for what it's worth, the pre-sales number I mocked at the last dinner. It was real. It was a good number. I knew it when I said it was a hobby. Kiana looked at him and decided the man who recorded a confession to save himself was also the man who would tell the truth to a lawyer tomorrow, and that was enough to build a cooperation on, if not a friendship. 9 o'clock, she said. Bring your lawyer. 9 o'clock, he said. In the car, Junho drove, because he had dismissed the driver, the way he had the first night. Kiana watched the wall of the Seiho house shrink in the mirror. You didn't gloat, he said. There was nothing to win by gloating, she said. Winning was the quiet part. The loud part was hers. She leaned her head against the window. I'm tired now. The right kind. You can fall apart, he said. You promised Hana you would, after the launch. There's a launch in 6 days. She laughed, the first real one in weeks, and it turned into a cough at the end of it, and he glanced over, and she waved it off, and this time It was just a laugh that ran out of breath, nothing waiting underneath it. The launch went out 6 days later, and it did not go out quiet. Miran had planned a compassionate postponement, a soft burial, a way to shave the value off a company while its founder lay in a bed. Instead, the spring collection dropped on schedule. All of it. The archive and the licensing and the ivory silk dress that had cost Kiana a lung and a fever and 1 drop of blood on the hem she'd never let anyone see. It was the largest collection Noelle Maison had ever shown. The pre-sales Hyuntae had called a hobby, doubled by the second morning. Hana stood in the back of the showroom with her tablet and cried once, briefly, and blamed the lights. Kiana wore champagne knit and flat gold sandals and moved through the room on her own feet, and no one there knew that 10 days earlier she had signed her name to a box of air to teach a family a lesson about who they had underestimated. Junho watched her from the doorway with his hand behind his back, near the only exit he hadn't seen anyone use, an old habit he would probably never lose, and he watched her build a room and then build a few more, and he thought about a house they had just bought 2 hours out of the city, with too many bedrooms for 2 people. The new house had a garden and a wall low enough to see over. It was there, 3 weeks after the launch, on a flat white morning with the packing boxes still half unopened, that Kiana came out of the bathroom holding a small white stick with 2 lines on it, and stood in the doorway, and could not for a moment make her voice work. Junho looked up from a box of books. He read her face before she read the room. He had spent 4 years learning to read her face across the length of his father's table, and he read it now across the length of an emptier one, and he stood, slowly, and crossed to her, and put 2 fingers to the side of her neck, the way he had the very first night, checking for a fever that wasn't there, and had never been the thing he was really checking for. "Well," he said. "Well," she said. They had started talking about a child 4 years ago, and never quite gotten there, through the brand and the fever and the family and the box of air. And now, in a house with a name on it that no Seo could reach, with a garden and a wall you could see over, the thing they had wanted longest had arrived on the far side of everything that had tried to take everything. He never said it, Junho said. My father, when we talked about wanting one, he said daughter to you as a knife and never once as a welcome. He can earn it, Kiana said, and put the stick down on a packing box, and put her hand flat over her own stomach, over the extremely marked waist of a champagne dress, and left it there. Everyone at that table can earn it now. That's the difference. The difference, he said. They used to hand things down by blood, she said. You are. You don't do. You either have it, or you spend your life knocking. She looked out the low window at the garden that was theirs. We're going to hand it down by choice. This kid isn't going to inherit a name. This kid is going to inherit a door that opens from the inside. Junho put his arms around her, over the waist, over the hand she'd left there, and rested his chin on the top of her head, over the long copper-shot hair, and for the first time in his life, he stood in a house where nothing was owed to anyone but the person you decided to give it to. Outside, the garden did nothing dramatic. It just kept being theirs. And Kiana Noelle, who had bowed and been corrected and been humiliated in a hospital bed, who had wept on cue and signed her name to nothing and let a family carry an empty box out a door thinking it was full, Kiana Noelle stood in a bright new room with her husband's arms around her and a life growing where the fever used to wait, and she did not say a word about winning. She had never once fought them. She had simply already won, months before they thought to start, and then she had let them find out slowly, one cold sentence at a time, at the head of a table they no longer sat at. The box was empty. She had been the whole time somewhere else, building the thing they'd never be able to reach, And she had built it, the way she built everything, from a single rented table and the refusal to be told which room she was allowed to enter. She built her own. And then she built a few more. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever built something with your own hands, only to have the people closest to you decide you didn't belong to it? When they called you an outsider at your own table, did you argue back, or did you quietly gather your proof? And when the truth finally sat on the table between you, could you choose consequence over cruelty? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, loyalty, and karma, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.